Ladies and gentlemen, this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Babbel, the #1 selling language learning app. Today, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That is 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to babbel.com and use the promo code CLEAREDHOT. Here's a phrase for you. ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? And in case you don't speak Spanish, that means where is the library, a term that you need to know. And I didn't learn that from Babbel, but what I did just use Babbel for is prep for my trip to Costa Rica, where, guess what, they speak Spanish. So one of my goals was to be able to brush up on my high school Spanish, and Babbel made that whole process ridiculously easy and fun. Bite-sized lessons that I actually used when I was on the trip. Babbel's 15-minute lessons make it the perfect way to learn a new language on the go. Unlike the language class I took in high school, Babbel designs their courses with practical, real-world conversations in mind, things you'll use in everyday life. Their teaching method has been scientifically proven to be effective. Plus, Babbel's speech recognition technology helps you improve your pronunciation and accent. Start your new language learning journey today with Babbel. Most often, I'll use it in the car because that's where I spend my time on the commute. Again, right now, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That's 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to babbel.com and use the promo code CLEAREDHOT. That's BABBEL.com, promo code CLEAREDHOT for an extra 3 months free. Babbel, language for life. This episode is also brought to you by Helix Sleep, a brand that has had a massive impact in my personal life and at my house. Because not being able to sleep or unsettled sleep for me is one of the #1 things that augurs me in. And there's plenty of reasons that people are struggling with sleep, whether it be politics, the pandemic, stress, love life, fill in the blank. And there's also nothing worse than worrying about those things and sleeping on a mattress that keeps you up at night. Enter Helix Sleep. They have a quiz that takes just 2 minutes to complete and matches your body type and sleep preferences to the perfect mattress for you. Everybody's unique, and Helix knows that. So they have several different mattress models to choose from. They have soft, medium, firm. Mattress is great for cooling you down if you sleep hot, and even a Helix Plus mattress for plus-size folks. Myself, my daughter, and my son are all now sleeping on a Helix mattress. And we all took the quiz, and we all netted different results. And that's the beauty of that online quiz that, again, takes 2 minutes. It will match you with the mattress that will be best for you. So if you're looking for a mattress, you take the quiz, you order the mattress that you're matched to, and it shows up right at your door, shipped for free. You don't ever need to go to a mattress store again. You don't need to take my word for it. They were awarded the #1 best overall mattress pick for 2020 by GQ and Wired magazine. Go to helix.com/clearedhot, take their 2-minute sleep quiz, and they will match you to a customized mattress that will give you the best sleep of your life. They have a 10-year warranty, and you get to try it for 100 nights risk-free. They'll even pick it up for you if you don't love it, but I suspect you will. Helix is offering up to $200 off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for the listeners of the podcast at helixsleep.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by Omax Cryo Freeze. Living with chronic pain or pain of any type, it is the worst. It's more than a feeling of discomfort. It can affect your entire life. Many of the listeners, if you're anything like me and you're active, you probably have some type of pain that has prevented you from relaxing or sleeping or stopped you from exercising. Perhaps it's even been ongoing for a few weeks now and hasn't improved with any other treatments that you have tried. For me, I'm a little active in jiu-jitsu training, and let me just tell you, you wake up in the morning a little bit stiff and sore sometimes. Enter Omax Health. If you're looking to get rid of nagging muscle and joint pain immediately while providing long-lasting recovery, then you need to try the natural breakthrough pain relief solution, Cryo Freeze CBD Roll-On, developed by Omax Health. This is a non-prescription, triple-action pain relief roll-on is specifically formulated to block pain receptors, reduce inflammation, and improve muscle and joint flexibility. The best part is it's 100% natural. CBD-powered remedy works its magic within 10 minutes of application, and relief lasts up to 8 hours, much longer than over-the-counter products. Omax Health is offering listeners 20% off a full bottle of Cryo Freeze CBD Pain Relief Roll-On. This discount also applies towards any product site-wide. Just go to omaxhealth.com today and enter code CLEAREDHOT. That is omaxhealth.com and enter the code CLEAREDHOT to get 20% off Cryo Freeze and site-wide. It's simple to use. You roll it over wherever it hurts, and you ice out the pain. No messy creams or horrible fragrances like some of those other products. CryoFreeze works within 10 minutes of application, improving physical training, recovery, and performance. So, omaxhealth.com and enter the code ClearedHot to get 20% off CryoFreeze and site-wide. omaxhealth.com, code ClearedHot. Last, but absolutely not least, this episode is brought to you by Betterhelp. If there is something that is interfering with your happiness or is preventing you from achieving your goals, Betterhelp is here to help you. They will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you can start communicating in under 48 hours. This is not a crisis line, and this is not self-help. This is professional counseling that is done securely online. There is a broad range of expertise available, which you may not have depending on where you live. The service is available for clients worldwide, assuming you have an internet connection. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in a waiting room if that makes you uncomfortable. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating the greatest therapeutic matches possible, so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. You can visit their website. You can read the testimonials from people who are using the service on your own. BetterHelp.com/reviews. If this sounds like something that could be a benefit to your life, visit BetterHelp.com/clearedhot. That's better, H-E-L-P as in Papa, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional counselor. Special offer for the listeners of the podcast, 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/clearedhot. My guest today is Wil Willis. You might recognize that name and the face if you watch the podcast on YouTube from his work on television, perhaps America's Greatest Rifle or Special Ops Mission, or most recently as the host of Forged in Fire. But let me tell you right now, there's a hell of a lot more to Wil than just that. Prior to even getting into the entertainment industry, he served in the military, first as an Army Ranger, and then he transitioned to become an Air Force PJ, or Pararescue Jumper. He's actually the only person that I know of that has made that transition from Ranger to the Air Force, and he explains why in the episode, so I will not attempt to speak for him. But all I can say is I was really looking forward to meeting and sitting down with Wil, and he exceeded all of my expectations. He is an awesome individual, fascinating background and experience. And with that, I will shut up and let you enjoy episode number 170 with Wil Willis.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north and south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
Oh, that could be the best start of a podcast ever.
Yeah. Only one time, just to know.
Yeah.
Just to know.
That is true. How are you going to know unless?
It's like a Brussels sprout. Think about it. You just suck on it a little bit. If you really like it, nibble it with your teeth, and then swallow it.
Why would you suck on a Brussels sprout?
My dad used to boil the shit out of them, man, and I hated them. I would cheek them and spit them out.
I could buy that.
So I'd suck all the juice out, cheek the Brussels sprout, like the actual roughage, and then I would spit it out when I left the dinner table. They were terrible.
I used to hide spaghetti on the support beams underneath our table.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and well, until the dogs got onto it, and then my parents were wondering why the dogs wouldn't leave the table alone. Then they got under the table, and then my career in crime came to an end at a young age.
My brother had a Spanish rice incident where he took Spanish rice-a-roni, and he literally put it on the floor thinking the dog would eat it. The dog didn't reject it. There were 5 of us, but only one person you could blame. That's where he was sitting. Yeah. And my stepmother served it to him for breakfast. It was disgusting.
In the modern day, I think there might be legal ramifications for doing that, but I can, as a parent, support that 100%.
You know, I can agree with the illusion that that's what you're going to get for breakfast, but to actually physically shove it down the kid's freaking throat.
That's where I think the legal ramifications might come in.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm jealous of your hair. It's well out of regs.
You know, I haven't
gotten glorious.
Not in a year. I haven't gotten a haircut in a year. You know, I've been quarantined.
I'm tempted to go back down that path too. I had almost 4 years when I was in where we were on relaxed standards, and it was amazing. Well below the shoulder blades, flowing. I couldn't grow a beard to save my life. I could go undercover in an Amish community or like impersonate Abe Lincoln, but that's about it when it comes to a beard. But that hair, I miss it.
You know, you're surprised at how much hatred you can get, you know, with having long hair, man. It's like the bald community comes out against you. You know what I mean? Like there's always somebody like that balds versus the freaking the hair guys, and they're like, get a haircut, hippie, and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna do that.
I miss it, but I started doing jiu-jitsu a couple years ago, and it's not awesome for that.
Yeah.
It gets in the way, it collects sweat, and oftentimes people will use it as like a door handle.
Yeah. That's where cornrows come into play. I'll cornrow my hair. I don't care, man. Like,
good God.
Here's I was working for a guy in Navy SEAL who thought he was going to use my hair as a handhold when we were tussling in the yard one day, and I got strong roots, baby. Like you can grab onto it all day. I don't care. If you're grabbing here, that means you're opened up someplace else, and he felt that. If he's got both hands on your hair, at least you know where they are. Yeah, well, that means I'm going to freaking punch him in the nuts.
So you just came from South Carolina, you said, right?
Yeah, I got invited to the Sorinex Winter Strong event.
I love Bert, by the way. He and I have crossed paths many times, a couple times at SHOT Show, a couple times through my buddy John Wellborn through the strength and conditioning world. He's awesome.
Dude, he's one of the most uplifting individuals I've ever had the pleasure of listening to speak. You know, he really talks a lot about community, about working together to achieve common goals, you know, to help other people with their goals. And, you know, I didn't know because I didn't know what I was getting into. I got invited by way of Neil Kamamura, who was invited by way of Jason Knight, or, you know, the knife making community. Bert had invited him. And it really is kind of like, it's all about who you know what I mean? And Bert called me up and he asked me if I'd like to come out after talking to Neil. And I said, sure. I was like, I'd love to come out and check it out. But I think the week leading up to it, I hadn't really gone out and socialized with anybody. You know, I have an end of the driveway policy. If it's not important, I'm not leaving the end of the driveway. So
is this a new policy?
No, well, since Flash was born, you know, back last March, it seemed like Flash was born, COVID hit. It was the timing, was amazing because I've been able to spend every day up until this weekend at home with my son and my wife, you know, working on our personal projects. And what a different experience compared to my older two kids and the way that things were back then.
I can't say I've ever been able to do that. Yeah. My kids are older now too, and like we were talking about in the car, you know, divorce and custody limits the amount of time you can have, and honestly, at 17, 15, and 12, let's just say the time with their dad may not be the apex of their priority list, given the social circle. So, I'm envious. That's awesome that you were able to be there.
Yeah,
that much.
yeah, and you know, it's a blessing and a curse. You know, I mean, certain things have to occur for me to have that kind of time available. As we know. But you know, mostly I just focus on the blessing part of it. You know, and if you don't learn to do that, I think, especially as a veteran, you can kind of, you know, go into some dark places. But back to the Bert Soren thing.
Yes, I have many questions because I've never been. And how long has he been doing it for? Do you know?
I think just a couple of years. Okay. You know, he does a Summer Strong event. It's a little bit bigger and there's a lot more attendance. But this was a really small event, a good mix of veterans, athletes, different personalities. I met some guys that were just straight construction guys out of Colorado, just really good individuals. And, you know, you get kind of put into this environment where you just meet and talk to people who are kind of like-minded individuals. You know what I mean? They're all about the outdoors. They're all about, you know, fitness and doing things. And you know, just kind of this energy gets generated. And you don't know what it is, but it feels good. And I remember telling Bert, like the first morning that I woke up, I walked down to his pond and there's an alligator in the pond. And I'm like, is that a real alligator? You know, I am in South Carolina and they have alligators. And I'm like, is Bert the kind of guy that would buy an alligator and put it in his pond?
Yes, he is.
You know? And then I realized it was just a target. My eyesight isn't what it used to be. But and then first thing in the morning, there's guys down there shooting arrows at this target, you know, trying to see who can hit closest to the dot. And I haven't been in that kind of competitive environment in a long, long time. And I was like, well, that's cool, man.
reignited the fire.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to do any of the competition stuff. I was like, I'm going to stay away from that stuff. You know, I'm 40-something years old. Leave that for the young guys. And then when it came time to compete, I found myself kind of like, I want to play. And the way that they did it was straight up grade school. Like I was down to like the last 4 to be picked.
What kind of competition were they doing?
You know, it was a little bit of a run, lift, shoot competition is what I would call it. Run, lift, shoot. A little bit of a run. You had different stations where you have to do lifts with kettlebells and stuff like that. And I was a personal trainer at Equinox for a while, so I got good fundamentals.
Yeah.
And but like it seemed like the young guys like, I'm going to do all 30 of these reps. I'm going to do all 50 of these squats. I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, I'm old enough to let you.
Yeah.
And then I felt pretty useless until we started shooting. And then I was like, okay, give me that pistol. Pop, 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 pop. And they're like, oh, yeah, that's right. You're a PJ.
A little bit of experience. And a Ranger before that.
Yeah.
Which, I'm going to be honest, I have many questions. I don't know of anyone who started off as a Ranger and then went over to the PJ side of the house.
There's a lot of guys, and guys with a lot more combat credibility than me. I think there's a guy, Webster, we called him Webb. I think his first name was Josh, and he went on to work for Rubicon, Team Rubicon, I think. And, there were a few guys that came through when I was an instructor, who were from the Ranger Battalion, but I didn't care then. I just I don't care where you came from. PJs now. Yeah.
What I will say is that in my mind now, looking back, combat to me gives nobody credibility. I know some absolute fucktards who have a lot of combat and no credibility.
Yeah.
Because they're a complete and utter piece of shit as a human being behind the uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a shift in mindset that I had post getting out or towards the tail end of my career. I used to look, you'd see guys in uniform, just a quick glance over the left breast pocket to see, check the old rack and stack.
Yeah.
Where have you been? What have you done at a wave top level? And then realized that none of that matters. You can really perform well in combat and not perform well as a human being.
I got my first exposure to that in the Ranger Battalion. I was there was a guy, and I'm not going to say his name. He doesn't. I mean, he's doing his time or has done his time. But there was a guy there that was in combat, was generally considered to have been a hero in Mogadishu. I got there right after, and he did some stuff that I'm not going to get into. And I went to Ranger school with this guy, and that's where I learned. That's where I learned, like, this motherfucker's a piece of shit. I don't care what combat he went through.
And the worst part about it?
Dude, he had his wife smuggle him cookies up to the mountains when he was in the gulag.
I mean, that's acceptable. Hold on. So far, everything so far is fine.
Yeah, the Ranger school sends him home, and then somehow he got sent right back to the same phase, and he got rolled in with me, and I was coming out of the desert at the time. And, and then he got put with our platoon. And I remember, there was a point, I think in our final ruck march, where he just refused to carry something, and I believe it was his saw, and I ended up carrying his saw down the mountain,
which is fine. Those aren't light people, by the way. He's not talking a bandsaw or like a
the
wood
M249 squad automatic weapon is what I'm talking about. Air-cooled, belt-fed, gas-operated, fully automatic machine gun that fires from the openable position at a rate of about 600 rounds per minute on cyclic.
You obviously paid much more attention than I did at that class because I know how to use it, but I could not have rattled it off.
I mean, here's the thing. Anything that's is belt-fed, like your M249, your M60, your 240 Golf, which is what we ended up cracking open in the battalion when we replaced the 60. It's all the same description.
Yeah,
the only thing that really changes are the rates of fire and maybe some of the components. Like we didn't have hand guards on our 240s.
They don't get hot. You don't need them.
No, not at all.
I think the M60 for me has the most beautiful cyclic rate of fire.
Yeah, man.
Just a touch slower.
Yeah.
Just that. It's so
easy to control.
Awesome.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like shooting a BAR.
Yes.
When you shoot a BAR, that rate of fire is like pop, 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 pop. And like you can really follow through on your shots rather than being freaking shaken up. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you grab those weapons with a higher rate of fire and it's like hanging onto a vibrator.
It's true. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've put a few rounds over the horizon with those things.
Yeah.
A little bit of creep.
Yeah.
But I remember doing immediate action drills, down man drills. I used to love it when the 60 guy would go down. I'd like rush over there.
Yeah.
People were thinking I was coming to save him. I'm like, no.
Well, a lot of people
take that sling off your shoulder. I want to shoot your gun.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what an immediate action drill is. I mean, what is that?
Well, And I'm assuming that your background would describe it the same. We're talking, well, this can be done vehicle or foot, but I'm talking dismounted. So we're usually in an element of 6 to 12 or 16, cut into two elements. Contact from the enemy. Obviously, the first rule of a firefight is to win the firefight. Second rule should be maneuver. So that is the immediate action drill. Immediate action, shooting back, and then it's, at a simplest level, fire and maneuver. So one element's going to shoot, the other element's going to maneuver. Generally linear. You can go oblique if you want to, but that's what it is.
You know what? Same. It's the same thing. No matter how you look at tactics, whether it's Marine Corps, Army, Navy, Air Force, the tactics are the same. The only thing that really changes are some of the weapon systems and some of the communication.
Yeah, the terms.
Yeah, the terminology. And that's where things can get confusing. But specifically, you talk about the 60 going down. That's the most casualty-producing weapon on your team. So, of course, the first thing you do is go over there and pick it up and put it back in the fight. How do you do that? How were you able to do that? Because you cross-trained, you know what I mean?
We had
always the sharing of information, the forced sharing of information. Like, you have to learn this right now because it's important.
Yeah, they would send, so we would go out to the desert. There's a desert training facility, Camp Billy Macon, out in the middle of nowhere, near the Chocolate Mountains in Cali.
Okay, never heard of those.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and 300-degree range, field of fire. You pretty much just don't shoot at the camp, and you're going to be okay.
Yeah, nice.
And so they would send the 60 gunners for, God, it must have been a week. And all they would do, they were stuff feeding. They were, running out of, because it comes for 60s, it would come traditionally in 100 rounds of belt fed. And they would, work on timing it and only leaving like a little bit of excess brass, snapping it in there.
Yeah.
Dropping boxes in. And fixing malfunctions with screwdrivers, changing out the barrels.
Yeah. Well, it's a crew-served weapon. You know what I mean?
In some services.
In some services. In the Army, it was definitely a crew-served weapon. Usually two guys manning that thing, but
in the teams, it's you're all in your onesie.
Yeah.
So they would do that, though, and then we were off doing... When I first got in, guys were still shooting M14s, which that's a great rifle too.
Oh yeah.
But M4s, ARs, the carbine type stuff, and then we would all come back together, and the 60 guys would teach us the stuff they had just learned. We would teach them, and then cross train for a couple of days, and then the instructor cadre, just during those drills, constantly guys going up and down, forcing us to understand that weapon system.
And so now, as a combatant, that's when you start to realize that it's not just knowing one weapon. You have to know all these weapons. You have to know schemes of maneuver. You have to know command and signal. You've got to know how to communicate on the battlefield. Being a warrior isn't just about the fight. You know what I mean? It's about being able to maneuver and think and react in that fight. You know what I mean? And being able to... I'm big on weapons. You know what I mean? Being able to pick up any weapon and put it into action. I don't got to know every little detail about that weapon. All I have to know is the fundamentals of that system. If you've got a belt-fed weapon, I'm going to figure it out. You know what I'm saying?
I need to introduce you to a man named Brian Shantosh.
Okay.
He is a Marine Corps officer, Navy Cross recipient, for essentially taking the enemy's weapons and killing them with them in the early days of Iraq. And I'm probably butchering this citation horribly, but I think I'm going to get the gross parts of it correct. In a Humvee ambush, he had his Humvee driver go directly at a trench line, basically crash the Humvee into a trench line.
Yeah, because that's what you do.
He exited the vehicle and personally cleared about 400 meters of trench, I believe.
Wow.
Killing people all along the way with like AKs. I believe he just picked up an RPG-7, sent that bad boy downrange because he was Winchester on his own rounds.
Exactly. and that's what being an effective combatant is all about. Not just being an expert with your weapon system, but also being able to just grab another weapon system and be an expert with that. You've been trained how to engage. You know what I hate to tell people this sometimes because it seems to ruin their idea of what an Army Ranger and Air Force Pararescueman or any of our combatants, the idea of them. But your job as a combatant is to kill quickly and efficiently in those combat situations. You know what I mean? And you want to do it fast. You're not going to draw it out. There's not going to be a lot of dick dancing around. You know what I mean? You're on your trigger, you put the targets down as quickly as possible, and you nullify the threat as quickly as possible. There seems to be this theory, and that's true for knife fighting as well. You want to know what a real fencer or a real knife sword fighter looks like, watch guys fence in the Olympics. It's about precision. It's about speed. It's about ending it as quickly as fucking possible. That guy's a sword fighter. The shit you see on Robin Hood, that's not sword fighting. That's tippy tap. It's a dance. It's a literal choreographed dance. Nobody's doing that stuff. You know what I'm saying? It's about engage, maneuver, and you know this. Yeah.
Yeah, I would describe my job as trying to be a jack of all trades, a gross understanding of almost everything that we might be able to encounter.
Yep.
And a mastery, if I'm being totally honest, of none of it.
Yeah.
But an operational capacity across the broadest spectrum.
Udo Fischer was an old PJ, and he drew a picture of a guy, you know, and it's 1950s style. It's a PJ. He's wearing his beret, and he's got a parachute on, and then there's a med kit underneath the parachute. Then there's a snowshoe sticking out over here. There's a ski over here. There's, you know, scuba fins on his feet. He's got a crampon on another foot. You know what I mean? There's ice climbing gear and all of this stuff.
Radio antenna sticking up, all that stuff.
I mean, think about it. If you're an expert in search and rescue and recovery, who's also scuba qualified, it's recovery anywhere, anytime.
Yeah.
Any place, using whatever means you need to get there. That's why that's why you get your military free fall quals. That's why you get your static line quals. That's why you get your scuba quals. If you need to recover something that's the bottom of the freaking lake, sea, ocean, whatever, then you can recover that. And it's not just personnel. It's you're a recovery specialist. Anything that they need recovered, you should be able to recover it.
Agreed.
You know, motorcycles, quads, you know, all that stuff, jet skis, it all came along with it. That was the fun stuff. You know what I mean? But at the end of that, you got to be able to do your job, you know?
Yeah, the tool you have access to is only as important or useful as the individual actually managing it.
Right. So it's really, when you talk about jack of all trades, which I call it jote. I put jote. I think I even have it on my Instagram as a
I like
jote.
that, actually.
Yeah. You know, that's what we were. It was pararescue, jack of all trades. It's right there on the poster, and I do feel like it's a gift and a curse at the same time.
What led you to that path?
My dad was in the military. He was an Air Force guy. I grew up on an Air Force base, and I lived next door to a SR-71 mechanic. And I thought I wanted to be a pilot because the SR-71s were flying over all the time. I thought that was the most badass.
I was going to say, they're badass.
It was like a sky dagger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just looked freaking awesome. I wanted to freaking go so fast it peeled my skin off.
How loud were those things?
They weren't. They weren't.
Really?
I mean, you could hear them at night, and you could see the purple afterburners in the sky, and you're like, SR-71. And you felt really special because you knew it wasn't something that was happening everywhere. It was a big time. It's a spy plane. You know, and we had the U-2s on the base too, spy plane. So at Beale Air Force Base in California, I think as a kid, I felt like I was like the son of like spies. You know what I mean? Like, all right, this is what our parents did. We spy on other countries, you know, and we collect information. But my dad he was a comm squadron guy. He was a first sergeant. But the neighbor's dad was a Green Beret. And I started hearing some of these Green Beret stories. Well, my dad and this guy shot the shit back and forth across the common carport because we lived in a duplex, right? And I was like, well, that just sounds awesome. That sounds like Rambo shit because I was a kid in the 80s. Rambo, Commando, freaking Die Hard, all that stuff, you know, one guy versus the world, you know. I was like, man, I want to, that sounds like Rambo shit. Like, that's legit. Rambo was a Green Beret. Maybe I could be a Green Beret. So I talked to my neighbor about it, and he said, don't be an idiot. Go in the Air Force. He said, go in the Air Force. They have special forces. It's called pararescue. You'll get a medical background. You get to do all the same shit that Special Forces does, but you'll get all the Air Force stuff. And I'm like, well, that sounds like a wonderful thing. And I like the idea of being a paramedic, you know, or getting into trauma medicine. And because my granny was a nurse. And then I took my ASVABs for the Air Force in high school as a junior, and then the recruiter changed. And then the next recruiter was like, you can't just be a PJ. If the Air Force needs cooks, you got to be a cook. And I said, I'm not slinging chow for anybody. It's not my jam. It's not my thing. There are a lot of people that are into it, man. My roommate's brother, when I was in Virginia Beach, he started slinging chow and became a chef and has cooked for presidents. You know what I mean? There is a career progression there. It just wasn't my progression. So I left, and I was like, screw it. I'm not going to do it. About a year later, I'm air hammering cement out of the back of cement mixers on my job at the Rock Yard, which my friends thought was hilarious because I'm dumb as a post. They used to call me a rock. You're a rock. And so I was at the Rock Yard in Yuba City, California. And and it's fucking like 106 degrees outside. I'm in the back of this thing all day. No ear pro, just like air hammering this shit out.
No ear pro.
Well,
Controversial move.
let's just say that when you're 18, it was provided but not used. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I crawl out of the back of this thing. I'm super pissed off, hot and sweaty, and I drive directly to the Army recruiter's office. I'm not going to tell you anything that's not true. I drive directly to the Army recruiter's office, and I walk in, and I'm covered in just dust and like it's streaked from sweat and just ass. And the guy's like, "What high school did you go to?" I said, "I went to Yuba City High School." And he said, "Your recruiter's back there." And he's the head of the recruiting station. And this guy's on the phone. And I had the audacity to just walk into his office and sit down. And I swear when I sat, a little cloud of dust. And the guy looks at me and he goes, "Hey, man, I'm going to have to call you back. I got somebody I got to deal with." And he hangs up the phone and he said, "What can I do for you?" And I said, "I want to jump." I didn't say I want to jump out of planes. I said, "I want to shoot people in the face and blow shit up." That's all I said. "I want to shoot people in the face and blow shit up." He's like, "Have I got the job for you?" He didn't hesitate, man. This guy was there.
You're a recruiter's wet dream.
Oh, man, dude. Oh, yeah. He showed me. He took me into a little room, popped in a VHS of Rangers. And one of the guys actually turned out to be my platoon sergeant later on. But showed me a video of these Rangers going down a river, like, freaking all the camo, all the shit that we never did in the Ranger Battalion. I never got on the Zodiac and paddled down a river in the Ranger Battalion. It never happened.
That's a good thing. You missed out on nothing. I did that a lot, and you missed out on nothing.
Yeah. Well, I got it as a PJ. Believe me. But they showed me all the shit blowing up and guys shooting guns. I said, "That's it. All right, let's do that." And he said, "When do you want to leave?" I said, "Well, get me out of here as fast as possible." And so we started the paperwork, and he said, "When's the last time that?" He said, "Have you ever smoked weed? You done any illicit drugs?" And I was like, "Absolutely." He goes, "Well, what drugs?" I said, "Weed," because alcohol, of course, because it was the 80s. Freaking you drink a beer with your dad, and it was fucking normal. Nobody gave a shit. It's your dad. So I had smoked weed and hash like one time.
Which is a derivative of weed, I believe.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't know what the hell it was, and it was not a good experience. But, he was like, "Okay, shouldn't be a problem, whatever. When was the last time?" I said, "Yesterday." Well, he had me going to MEPS on Friday.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. So this is like a Monday, and he showed up at my work every day with like a gallon of water and would make me drink a gallon of water, and he'd tell me to keep drinking water, keep doing this. And I went to MEPS on my dad's birthday, and we were supposed to go fishing, but I went to MEPS instead in Oakland. I passed the urinalysis, and I enlisted in the Army with an RGV-4 infantry contract. And when I was there at the MEPS, I was like, I want to be a medic, because that PJ thing was in my head. I was like, I want to be a medic. Can I be a medic? And there ain't no such thing as a Ranger medic. Either you want to shoot people in the face or you want to be a medic. Which is it going to be? So I picked shoot people in the face, because I was an angry young dude, who just wanted to get out of his town. And, I was gone in 3 months. In 3 months, I was on an airplane. I went home that night. My dad was pissed. He's like, "We're supposed to go fishing today." And I said, "Well, happy birthday. You got rid of me. I joined the Army."
What did he think about that?
He said, "Go to your room."
How old were you at this time?
I was 18 years old. And hey, man, I had a job. I had my own car. I could have been living on my own.
You were adulting.
Yeah. And he was like, "Go to your room." And I went to my room, because he's my dad. My dad's a very, I love my father, but he was an individual you did not argue with.
Yep.
And so I went to my room, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, what the fuck? I thought he'd be happy to join the military. And about half an hour later, he comes over, and he's got his Coors Light, you know what I mean? And he's like, all right. You went into the Army. I know you can pick your job. What job did you pick? I said, "I'm going to be an airborne ranger." He said, "You're the stupidest son of a bitch alive." And he walks away, and he's pissed. He's angry. And then he comes back, and he goes, "I don't understand how you can throw yourself out of a perfectly good airplane. I was in the Air Force for 26 years, and I can count on one hand the number of times I got onto a military aircraft." I'm like, "On one hand, Pop," like, "Come on, man." And he's like, "On one hand." And I mean, he let it go, and I think ultimately he was really proud of me. He was just really worried about me.
Which is a natural parental instinct.
Well, I got a taste of that when my son joined the Marine Corps, or enlisted in the Marine Corps. Unfortunately, he broke his collarbone, which delayed his enlistment. He was in the delayed enlistment program, broke his collarbone. He had a little conflict with his recruiter about his shipment date and recovering, and then he broke it again recently.
Oh shit!
So he's been on the mend for a while. So I don't know what he's gonna do, but I felt that pang of like, I told you not to join the Marine Corps. You know what I mean? And not because the Marine Corps is bad or anything like that, just because I've been exposed to all of the services, even the Coast Guard. I've been exposed to all of it. And I told him, I'm like, what do you want to get out of your military service? After he told me. And I took him to the Warrior Games. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I was like, here's the real deal, buddy.
Yeah.
This is
the
what
real aftermath.
Yeah, this is the real deal. Look at the stands. How many Americans do you see up there? How many Americans are supporting these veterans, as they're running up and down the track? I support them. I'm a veteran. I'm one of them. To me, they're my brothers and sisters who got effed up in combat, and I wish I could have freaking done something more fun. I mean, I feel pain for them. It's that empathy. And then I was like, but how many other Americans do you see up in those stands right now? It's the Warrior Games. And he was like,
probably was a ghost town.
Yeah, man, it's a ghost town. He's like, maybe like 400. I said, okay, we'll be generous. We'll call it 1,000. We'll call it 1,000. How many people show up for a football game where people are kneeling, for the national anthem? How many people show up for that? And he was like, a lot. I'm like 25,000, 50,000, whatever.
Depends on what the stadium will hold.
I said, know what you're getting into, because if you think you're going to go out and just be a hero to the fucking country by kicking in doors and shooting people in the face, that's not what it is. You got to go because you understand what you're getting into. It's like, if you feel like you need to get it on, you feel like you got a fire burning in your belly and you need to go get it on, and you're angry or you're passionate about what you're doing, by all means, go in the Marine Corps. Absolutely. Fucking, you want to go freaking be a savage? Be a savage. Go to the Ranger Battalion. Be a savage. Take that energy and have somebody help you temper it. You know what I mean?
What did he want to do in the Marine? Or what does he want to do?
He wanted to do straight infantry. Straight infantry. And it's what I did. You know what I mean? And here's the thing. He's an angry guy. You know what I mean? He's got a lot. And he's fit.
How old is he?
He's 20 now. He's fit. He's capable. He's got a lot of a drive and determination. He didn't do the best in high school, but like I didn't either. It wasn't for me.
Same.
But he doesn't know. He's at a time in his life where he's looking for leadership and he doesn't have it. He's looking for mentorship and he doesn't have it. And he thinks, all of this anxiety that he has, he's going to get it out by going and getting it on. And
he'll get the leadership. He'll get the mentorship.
Yeah.
And I caution people the same way. I've never tried to talk anybody out of military service. All I will ever try to say is, be sure you know what you're getting into. There's great benefits from stable economics, healthcare, education, lifelong stuff that can help you. But understand, the military will get their pound of flesh first.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And you might end up in a place where, it's a profession of arms. And never forget that.
Exactly. And for me, I grew up in it. I grew up in the military. It's like being a Spartan baby. You know what I mean? When you grow up on a military base, everybody's geared towards combat. Everybody's geared towards national defense. I mean, everything. I don't care if you're a pack clerk, who's just filling out, making sure that I or you, the boots on the ground, get paid. I mean, that's an important part of the entire process. You know what I'm saying? So you're part of that big machine, the big military machine, and I love it. I love that culture. The warrior spirit runs through every culture. You know what I mean? And there are people who are like us in every culture throughout the world. And I love that we live in a country that can kind of take those individuals like us who have that and shape us into capable leaders. It's just unfortunate that sometimes it's too big almost, you know what I mean? Things get overlooked.
I was going to ask, as I'm listening to you describe that, what are your thoughts on how, because I agree with you, the military is able to do amazing things with young men and women, and to be able to mold them and direct them in that purpose. How do you think they do if you had to give them a grade on their job when people are leaving the service to prepare them for the after?
F minus. and here's why. I in 2016, I was having a really hard time. I was hosting Forged in Fire. I had done a couple of TV shows prior. I was having some real identity things going on, because now my job was becoming full-time entertainment industry.
Yeah.
I didn't have time for my personal projects. I was having trouble finishing my college degree, and kind of on the outs with the actress that I was dating at the time, and it was in and out, up and down, and I also was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which dates back to my childhood, and it was enlightening, you know what I mean? And so
what is that?
Borderline personality disorder is a disorder. It's an actual mental illness, is what they call it. It's a mental illness that develops in primarily females, interestingly enough. But I think it's overlooked in males a lot at this point. And it's one of the it basically is it comes from abandonment issues. My mother left when I was very young, 4 years old, and the woman that stepped in was not a good person to us. You know what I mean? And my father wasn't the type of person that hugged you a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that the guys who came up during the Vietnam era and went through service during the Vietnam era, they're different kinds of dudes, you know what I mean?
My father, among them, he was in the first squadron of patrol boats in Vietnam.
Yeah.
He's where I heard about SEALs from, because he was an insertion extraction platform for them.
Yeah, they're not emotional. Nobody was talking about like some of the damage that was done, and my dad had,
And they got treated like shit when they got back. Different than the modern era of being a veteran.
Yeah. So my dad, he just wasn't that kind of a guy. So I had abandonment issues from a small time as a kid. But, these things coupled with, abuse, like physical abuse, and then and just the way that we came up, really developed a problem. And I didn't recognize it, because when I joined the military, all those things that I want to do, all the anger that I had, all the impulse control problems that I had, the adrenaline, I really became a junkie for like getting it on, like just doing shit, just getting it on, just like let's be active all the time. Let's always be doing something. And when I wasn't doing something, I create something to get into. You know what I mean? Something to keep, my impulses just firing all the time. And then drinking, substance abuse is part of this as well, because now I've got something to blame my impulse problems on, and you see people do it all the time. Oh, I was drunk. You know what I mean? Like I was the drunk. I was the guy that would facilitate madness. Now, nothing I ever did or facilitated resulted in any criminal charges or any kind of arrest. I got arrested one time, but not charged. I got handcuffed and taken home. And it was one of those things where
I've done that once.
I think I was in handcuffs just as a precaution. And then I decided I was uncomfortable and wanted to sit down. So I pushed the handcuffs under my ass and was sitting on the trunk or on the bumper of the car. And the cop thought I was trying to slip the cuffs and skip my forehead off the asphalt. And so I was bleeding, and then I think he felt bad after that, and he offered me a ride home, but still in handcuffs, mind you. And then by the time he got me home, I had slipped at least one leg out, and he was like, "What are you doing?" I was just drunk guy, you know what I mean? Just drunk nonsense, mayhem. And I struggled a lot, and my relationships were terrible. My interpersonal relationships, borderline personality disorder. They called the disease where, the guy looks fine from far, but once you get involved with him, shit turns into a roller coaster ride. So, really hypersensitive. I can, my emotional mood swings were crazy, like hyper reactive and angry about something, then laughing my ass off another second. And really, I could move past anything that I was angry about. Like, it didn't matter that much. Oh, I wasn't that angry about that.
So it'd flash, but then go away quickly.
It'd flash and go away. And you go through manic episodes as well, where, it's almost like a disassociative thing, where it's almost like you're outside of your body looking in at yourself, and you can see yourself kind of just like getting fired up. And I'm not saying that the things that I get fired up don't have merit, but I let them affect me so much more than a normal person would. You know what I mean? Let's say somebody called me Al-Qaeda.
Yep. As a hypothetical.
Let's say somebody referred to me as a Al-Qaeda MFer. Well, you're going to get a hypersensitive reaction. You know what I mean? And then in the aftermath, I always, there's always this remorse. There's always this regret. There's always this idea that like, okay, I shouldn't have handled it like that. And it's easy to go back and be like, yo, I'm sorry, man, whatever. But that's that swing. That's that a hyper elevation, and then afterwards, boom, right after, just the mood swing that people are like, okay, this guy's fucking crazy.
So the diagnosis, is there a treatment that comes with that has helped you?
Dialect behavior therapy is the best treatment, and I don't go to a group or anything like that. And really, what it is talking about impulse control problems are my biggest thing. The compunction to like drive fast, suicidal tendencies are part of this disorder as well. I thought everybody thought about suicide my whole life. I started thinking about it when I was very young, very, very young.
When you say that, do you mean you were thinking about the concept of suicide, or you were thinking about killing yourself?
Oh, I was thinking about killing myself as very, very young child. You know what I mean?
Fuck.
I'm talking maybe as young as 8 years old.
Like,
Probably. Like if I just freaking took myself out of this equation, I wouldn't have to deal with this stuff. I wouldn't have to deal with this,
Holy cow.
What's going on in my house. My dad turned into kind of a little bit of a different person at some point. And where I shared a bed with him when I was really young, and he was divorced and raising 5 of us on his own. After he got remarried, all of a sudden this distance was created, and he became almost like an enforcer for abuse. You know what I mean? He'd come home from work, and I mean, for a while there, it seemed like we were getting beat with a bodor or a belt, or there was a lineup like nightly. And as a little kid, even if it wasn't nightly, it makes a huge impression on you. You don't love your parents. You're scared of them. You know what I mean? And I was really scared of my parents. I was really scared. And there were broken arms, and not mine. My kid sister had a broken arm one night, and that was explained away somehow, and we went to school with welts and bruises, and my dad had a belt that had the name Terry on it, and I called it the Terry up your ass belt, because his name wasn't fucking Terry, and the only thing they used it for was beating our asses. And I think that at the time, I mean, it's just people doing the best that they can. You know what I mean? So my dad, he has a lot of issues and regrets about it, and that marriage didn't last after we were all gone. There was nobody else to focus your issues on,
Have you talked with him about that
yeah,
shit?
yeah. We've talked with him. And a lot of things he didn't know. He didn't know, like when I was in 4th grade and I was emptying the dishwasher before school, my stepmother, for no reason, just busted a glass on the back of my head. Had no idea that happened, because she said, go take a shower, whatever, and you don't have to go to school today. Don't tell your dad. I was too scared to tell him. Yeah. I was scared of the repercussions that would come from her for telling him. You know what I mean? So there were some things that he didn't know.
How did he rationalize the things that he did know? For example, the Terry belt.
Yeah, well, you kind of laugh it off. And then also, there's the perspective. Like, you were just a kid. It wasn't that bad. You know what I mean? But here's
fuck that.
Yeah. But here's the truth of it. It doesn't matter. I mean, when your parent is violent towards you for, shit. There was a Twinkie incident in our house. A Twinkie incident where all 5 of us kids lined up like we were at the fucking amusement park and got beat with a bodor over a fucking Twinkie. You know what I mean? There were all kinds of little things like that. When I say I thought about killing myself when I was 8 years old, this is a fucking true story. My stepmother gave me a house key. I was a latchkey kid. I was the first one home from school, from elementary school every day. I'd walk home and I'd open the door for everybody else. I gave my stepmother the key. She needed it. Gave it to her. And then I went to ask for it back. And this is after maybe a weekend. I was like, I need the key so I can let everybody in tomorrow. I'm 8, mind you. And she's like, I don't have it. I'm like, yeah, I gave it to you. I gave you the key. And she's like, no, you didn't. Where's the key? I was like, I gave it to you. So I get a beating for losing the key. And I'm upstairs I'm in my room, like looking for something that I know I don't have. You know what I mean? But I'm looking for it. I'm dumping out my freaking toy
Probably
box.
doing the best you can to find something.
Yeah, I'm rifling through my drawers looking for something that I know I don't have. She calls me down to the dining room and pretends to pick up this key off the floor. At the same time, it's hung up on the key ring of her own keys. And I see her taking it off of the key ring. Now, I watched her put it on the key ring, which is why is that me or you?
It might be me.
Oh, shit, that might be me, man.
I have my phone on silent.
Key
ring.
I have no idea where my phone even is.
Perfect. That's probably me then.
All right.
All right, you're watching her put the key on the key ring.
Yeah, I'm watching her put the key on the key ring, and I know exactly what's happening. And she's like, I found the key right here. And me being the guy I am, or the guy I even grew up to be, I was like, no, you didn't. It's right there in your hand. And she's still struggling with it. She's like, no, it's not. She like turns, snaps it off the key ring, and I get another beating for lying. For lying. And this kind of set the tone for like, you know, like if I'm going to get beat anyway, I'm going to light Beale Air Force Base on fire. Like,
Yeah.
Like, it really did kind of set the tone for like, you know, and I had 2 older brothers, my parents, and God bless them, you know, in a lot of ways, because they both had to work jobs to feed us. You know what I mean? So we were at home by ourselves a lot. My big sister really became the matriarch in our lives for me and my brothers and my sister. And what a burden to place on a teenage woman, you know what I mean? You know, raising these other kids. And like really that was our saving grace was my big sister. She was the one that was like, took us into a room, was like, it's not going to be like this forever. You're going to get out one day and it's going to be amazing. And we never heard from my mother again after I think I was like 6 or 7 years old, maybe. You know, so
how is your relationship with your dad now?
Great. You know, he lives in Alabama. And he lives the kind of life that he wants to live. I tried to steer him in a different direction at one point. You know what I mean? Like, you know, I didn't want him drinking, and you know, he drinks about 24 freaking Coors Lights a day. He's a good man. My dad is a good man. He's a good man. He really tried his best. I think that he was just a little I don't want to say submissive. I think he was a little bit. He didn't know what to do. You know what I mean? He's got 5 kids. He couldn't do it on his own, you know, and he married this woman that he thought was going to be a certain way, and she was another way. And I think with his old school kind of mentality, you just kind of tough it out. I love my father more. He's like one of the bravest individuals in some ways that I've ever met in my life. And in other ways, you know, I think, like, why were you such a pussy? Like, why didn't you stand up for us? Why didn't you step in and do the right thing? You know, I mean, he broke a boat oar on my kid's sister. The boat oar that he beat us with our whole lives. He was beating my kid's sister the week before I went into the Army. She's fucking 16 years old. And he's beating her with a boat oar, and I can hear him saying, stand up, stand up, stand up. And at the same time, I'm hearing him hit her. I'm like, if she's not standing up, you're not hitting her on the ass with that fucking boat oar. You know what I mean? What's happening? And I go to the freaking door, and he comes out of the room, and the boat oar split in 2. Not like snapped, like in half. Mm-hmm. It's literally split. And it was oh man, I just remember looking in his eyes, and I think that that's when something shifted in him and in me. And I packed up my sister, and I took her out of the house that day. I took her to a friend's house. I said, you can never go back there. You can never go back to that house. It's poison. And my dad was doing what my stepmother wanted him to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the fight was between my stepmother and my sister. My dad had no, you know, he's just.
How's her relationship with him now?
Oh, my kid sister and my dad. You know what? I'm always amazed at how much my kid sister is able to she loves him just the same as I do. You know what I mean? She has no ill will towards him. And you can't do that. There's somebody, you got to forgive people for yourself. You know what I mean? If you carry around all that trauma from your childhood, all of that stuff, you know what I mean? And you never are able to say, okay, on some level, I understand where you're coming from. You have to. If you can't understand from some level, maybe the frustration, undiagnosed conditions that they had, if you can't understand that they were living in an era where they couldn't or weren't getting the help that they needed, then you can forgive that. You can say, okay, I understand that. I didn't know I had borderline personality disorder. I didn't know about dialect behavior therapy. I didn't know about the medicinal effects of marijuana. You know what I mean? And you know, I just drank, and my dad just drank, and that's how you dealt with the stresses in your life, and that's what it was. And like, I don't fucking feel sorry for myself. I don't, because all of those things, all of the trauma, all the good, because there was good too. You know what I mean? All the good, all the bad, they shape you into the person that you are today. And that person doesn't have to be a good person or a bad person or whatever. It just has to be a person that you can live with. I don't have to live my dad's mistakes. You know what I mean? That doesn't have to be my mistake. It's his mistakes.
Did those experiences shape who you became as a father?
Yeah, but I also, when I say I understand. I have a 23-year-old and a 20-year-old. I started having babies when I was 23. You know what I mean? And I made mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. I made huge mistakes. I spoiled my kids. You know what I mean? I did physically discipline my kids. I lost my shit one night with my son right before he went into high school. He failed math or something, and so I only had him for the summers. And actually, I only had him for 6 weeks because football camp would always like creep into the time that I spent with him. So I'm trying to teach this kid an entire year's worth of math in 6 weeks, which means he's getting up with me every day at like 5 a.m. He's getting his school books together while I'm getting ready to drive to Camp Pendleton to teach tactical emergency trauma care. He rides in the truck with me doing math on my laptop online the whole way. He gets to work. He sits at my desk or outside the classroom a lot of times. There's probably some guys out there that remember my son sitting outside of your classroom or at a desk outside while we did emergency trauma care stuff, TCCC stuff. And he would do math. And then when we drove home in the middle of the night or at the end of the night, he would do math all freaking day long. And it really got to a point where I was trying to get him to show his work, man. I was trying to help this guy get into high school. You know what I mean? Like, this is a huge impediment to your progression educationally.
Yep.
And there was one night that I just had enough, man. And I think I smacked him in the back of the head a couple of times. I might even have freaking smacked him on the face, you know. And I don't remember exactly. I know that I was getting really, really at the end of my rope with this. And like, I knew he was capable. I knew he was competent. He just wasn't inclined to do the work. And so I'm making spaghetti and this pencil comes flying. Pew, pencil hits the cupboard and freaking lands. And then he said he wasn't doing this shit anymore. And I said, you are doing this shit. And he got out of his chair. And the second he got out of his chair, I felt like he gave me the up down. Sizing me up. He's like, I'm about what you weigh. At 14, he's a big dude. You know what I mean? But he's maybe 185 pounds. I'm about 190. But it's 185 pounds of chewed bubble gum, like, you know. So he came at me, and I knocked him down, and I grabbed him by his hair. And this, I remember it in full detail. I smacked him 3 times hard. And then I picked him up by his hair, and I slammed him against the wall, and I let go, and he made a run for it. He beelined it for his bedroom. And I chased him because now it was on. You know what I mean? Now he ignited something in me that had been dormant for a while. And he jumped on his bed, and I grabbed him by his pants, and I pulled him out of his bedroom by the back of his pants, you know, and he's hanging on to the doorway, and I'm yanking. And finally he lets go, and I roll him over in his eyes, man. Saucers, right?
Yep.
And then I smelled that smell. You know that smell. You know that smell. If you're a hunter, you know that smell. You know, if you've ever been around somebody that's really scared, you know that smell. And I remember that smell from when I was a kid. And I stopped. And we called his mom, and he said that I was being abusive. And I tried to laugh it off. I could, but at the same time, you know, I mean, looking back on it, he was straight up, man.
Yeah.
He was straight up, and then that's when I think, I don't know what year it was, but it was 10 years ago, roughly. And that's when our relationship with my son got really ruptured. And he didn't come to see me for about another 18 months after that. He would not fly out to see me. And I had to, you know, point all of that outward kind of, what do you want to call it, criticism back at myself. And really reevaluate, like, what kind of a parent are you? What kind of a parent are you going to be? And I was struggling with a lot of things. I was struggling with my own transition from the military, and it never again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, never again. And my other son saw the whole thing, so I never had to again in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a tough journey of self-reflection, though.
Yeah, and I can sit here and I can tell people, and you know, in a lot of ways it's funny, you know, when you talk about the big step he took towards you, and he's going to make this monster swing, and I stepped on his foot and I pushed him down, and that was it. you know, and then it was also the realization that he had no idea who I was. We hadn't shared that much time together. And I was like, have you ever been in a fight before? He's like, yeah, one. That he kind of won. And then we go down the whole, have you ever been in a fight with a guy in high school? A grown man, a guy that shaves, an Army Ranger, an Air Force Pararescueman. You know what I mean? Have you ever been in a fight? You know, if you've never fought those people, why would you start with me? You know what I mean? Like, why?
Yeah, don't pick a fight with somebody who's immersed himself in a violent culture for a long period of time.
Exactly. And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm not Tim Kennedy. I'm not the guy that's going to go out there and freaking like rock somebody.
Tim's a savage, by the way. I've rolled with him.
Yeah.
I did not win.
Yeah. I'm not that guy. I got a little cauliflower ear from my days grappling and stuff like that. I was a Ranger Battalion champ, but I'm not that. I'm not the guy that's going to win every fight that I'm in. I just like it. That's it.
You're not uncommon there.
Yeah.
I think that occupation draws people who have that experience or who have that. No, there you go.
The locks, yeah.
Yeah, the people who they're drawn to it.
Yeah.
It's part of when you're a recruiter, like I want to blow things up and shoot people in the face. He was like, oh,
yeah.
Let me finish soiling myself because you're a recruiter's wet dream.
Yeah. and I don't understand where that compunction comes from. And I'm not a badass. Am I a good shot? Yes. Do I understand weapons and tactics and maneuvers and stuff like that on a level that a lot of people don't retain? Yeah, I do. I retain a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? I really do. And it's just part of who I am. And but I will in no way ever say that I'm on the level of some of these other guys. I respect them. I've never met Tim or anything like that. I respect him. He's got an energy that is seems to be pinging right up there with some other dudes that I know.
They broke the mold with him.
Yeah,
Tim.
Yeah. And I respect that too. And I know he's worked in this business that I'm in, the TV business, and he's probably had a lot of the same problems that I've had in this business. You know what I mean? And that's where you talk about the transition.
Yeah.
Nobody teaches you how to not be what they turned you into.
They spend weeks and months on the on-ramp, and then I did. There was a 5-day course of which I attended about 4 hours when I got out.
Yeah. And here's the thing. You're like, I'm not going to that. Everybody tells me it's BS. I already know how to write a resume. And that's what they're doing. And they might say, hey, these people hire veterans. And then you're like, I don't want to work for Amazon, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to work for this multi-million-dollar corporation that didn't even pay taxes last year. Like, I don't want to work for them. But that's the job that's out there. I transitioned out of the Army in 98, like I said.
How many? So you did 4 in the Army?
I did 4 years in the Army.
Okay.
I went in on October 20th of 93, 17 days after Mogadishu. I got out. I think the official discharge date was either February 14th or 18th of 98.
Why'd you decide to get out?
I didn't want to sleep in the dirt anymore, man.
That wasn't in the video you watched?
I know the moment. I know the moment. It's in my head. We were on a training operation. We're on Fort Benning. You know what I mean? We're doing the training. We're basically road marching from range to range to range, in the wintertime. And it's fucking cold, man. It's cold. It's 9 degrees outside. So it's pretty much the same
like
temperature. But it's in Georgia, so it's like wet cold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the packing list comes out, and it's the RSOP, Ranger Standard Packing List. No snivel gear. No fucking, you got
poncho
your
liner.
No.
Puffy
Poncho
jet.
liner was part of it.
Good.
But like your smoking jacket, that's snivel gear. The Poly Pro top, snivel gear. Don't have any unauthorized snivel gear. Boots, jungle boots, always.
Which are
your
great
uniform,
for cold weather. Jungle boots are just designed for it.
Oh yeah. your BDUs. You know how you had the summer and winter weight ones?
Yeah.
Always summer weight. 24/7. You had winter weight BDUs, but they just hung in your freaking wall locker. You never used them. You had 6-issue sets of summer weight BDUs, and that's what you used for the field, for starches and spits, for whatever. It was very, very regimented. Attention to detail was everything. Don't have anything that's not on the packing list. And if you've forgotten anything on the packing list, you're effed. You're getting your ass handed to you. And that's okay. I'd rather do a billion freaking push-ups, you know what I mean, and take an ass chew and then have somebody write me up some piece of paperwork and put it on a counseling statement, you know what I mean? Like, come on, man. Now you're just documenting that I was a dumbass one day, yeah, we were in a patrol base. Again, we're walking from range to range to range. We had the radio setup, I forget what it was. I forget what kind of radio it was. And we had a revolving guard on the radio. And so it was my turn for a radio watch, and I get up, and I'm sitting there by the radio, and I'm freezing my ass off, and nobody's calling, and I'm just like, fucking hey, it's so cold. And, like, this is one of those nights where you prearrange a spoon with, like, 2 or 3 other guys. Like, yo, we're going to be fucking spooning. You want to come spoon later? Like, in your squad, everybody's, like, spooning up. Like, the gayest shit I ever did was in the Army. I'll tell you that right now. Like, I did some really gay stuff, and it's fine. It's fine. I'm good with it. I'm comfortable with myself. But anyway, so all of a sudden I started hearing these, and I was like, oh shit, somebody's awake. I'm going to go talk to that guy. You know, I'm just going to walk the perimeter and talk to that guy. And I walk over to this guy, and he's laying on, it's my platoon sergeant. He's laying on the ground. And this is the guy that's like, fuck that, you don't need no goddamn snivel gear. I jumped into Panama, motherfucker. I was like, Panama was like 190 fucking degrees. You know what I mean? Like, you didn't need your snivel gear.
Yeah.
And he's laying there on the ground, like with his head on his rucksack, underneath his poncho and poncho liner, and he's in his dead sleep. And it just kept happening over and over. And then as I walked the perimeter, there were other guys. Same thing.
Yeah.
For absolutely no reason other than to say, that sucked. Let's go drink a beer and talk about it. You know what I mean?
That is like what cut enlistment short.
Yeah, I was like, it doesn't make any sense. And of course, every time we got alerted, it was to fucking try to find some ammo that somebody didn't turn in, or like we were counting to go to war pallets, or it was all bullshit. The Haiti thing, you know, I remember being on the plane, fully kitted up with the freaking rotors turning. SOCOM commander comes on board. Missions go, missions go. Hope you come back, son. Missions go. Why would you say that? Missions go. And then he walks off, and then as soon as he walks off, somebody else comes on, and they're like, all right, we're spinning down, you know what I mean? And we're on 2-hour hold. Now we're on 24-hour hold. Now we're just counting ammo. We're just counting ammo back into the bin. So nothing really was like popping off, and I felt like we were doing a lot of training with no really clear thing, you know, no thing that we were training for. And then we worked with the PJs, and I remembered back to those days of like the stories about the PJs and the medicine. And then when I was working with them, they all smelled like soap and had long hair, and you know, they called each other by their first name, and they had the coolest gear, and they were getting free fall pay and scuba pay and hazardous duty allowance pay and fly pay and all of this stuff. And I was like, well, I'm getting $110 a month for jumping out of a plane and nothing else. And I think I'd do a lot of hazardous duty. I was like, you know, this is maybe the better option. They're on the missions too.
Yeah. They're
shooters too, except they work in smaller teams. And then, of course, you know the stories of Mogadishu and stuff like that. And so when I got out, that was actually my backup plan. Can you imagine that? Somebody saying my backup plan in life is to be a pararescueman. You know, I got out, and I was supposed to work for the DeVos family, or I thought I was going to work for the DeVos family as personal security detail. And then they were like, you know, you're a little young. You know, your resume looks like a freaking mercenary resume, you know, Stinger missile school. Like, why would you put that on a resume? But I did. I put everything on the resume.
If I had that school, I would put it on the resume.
Advanced military operations on urban terrain. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that don't translate into the civilian world. And they were like, okay, go to college. Well, I had a new baby. How am I going to go to college? What am I going to do? So I got a construction job. When the job's over, you go on unemployment. That's just the way of things in Michigan back then. You know, you go on unemployment, or you get right into another job where you could be unemployed. And I didn't like the instability. I had a car repossessed. I was like, I got to go with what I know, which is what I grew up with, military service. So I went back into the Air Force, and I was like, I'm going to be a PJ, smoking 2 packs a day. You know what I mean? Like, I had no idea. I had no idea what the NDOC was. The recruiter was like, you got to go to an NDOC, but that shouldn't be a problem.
NDOC for the Air Force?
NDOC for the Air Force, for pararescue. You know, the 10-week pool pre-scuba thing has like a 90% attrition rate. And when people say how do things compare physically, it's the physically the toughest course of instruction I've ever been through in my entire life.
So you really did your research before going in?
No. I fly by the seat of my pants everywhere I go. I don't know what I'm doing most of the time.
How was it Was it easy to get back into the military? I'm assuming, it was an honorable discharge from the Army.
Honorable
Do you
discharge from
skip
the Army.
the boot camp portion of the Air Force, or what did they do
I did
with you?
skip boot camp, but I lost a pay grade. I was an E5 in the Army.
E4 in the Air
And
Force.
they were like, okay, the rank progression is slower in the Air Force. They're going to take away a pay grade, but you'll get it right back.
Wink,
You know what I mean?
wink.
When you test. What a fucking lie. I couldn't even test until I had a skill level commensurate with my grade in my chosen career field. The pipeline for pararescue is fucking a year and a half to 2 years long just to get your 3 level.
What is the pipeline?
The pipeline is when you become a PJ, they want you right out of PJ school to be fully capable of integrating with any special operations team. So, and fully capable as a rescue specialist. So you go to a 10-week indoctrination course, which is an attrition course, just like BUDS would be.
Yep.
And for that 10 weeks, there's a lot of pool work, there's a lot of physical activity, there's a lot of mental development.
It's a
mental
grind.
toughness. Yeah. And it is a grind to see if you can handle the op tempo and the stresses that come with being a pararescueman. And me being prior service, very easy. But we did lose. We only graduated 18 out of, I think, 120 that started. And of those 18, even fewer became PJs, because after that, you got to go to the Army scuba at the time for me down in Key West. We lost a couple of guys there. Then you got to go to airborne school, behavior problems. You lose a couple of guys there. Survival school up in Washington. I went to the Army SEER, so I didn't have to go. Just like airborne school, I'd already done that in the Army. And then at the time, you went to SOMC, the Special Operations Combat Medic course in Fort Bragg. And you did the half course. You didn't do the full course.
Is this equivalent to 18 Delta?
Yeah, you start the 18 Delta course, but before they get into their rotations, like doing the PA level stuff, they pull you out.
Gotcha.
You get in, you get the trauma, you get the ER rotations up in New York.
Or
the hospital,
ambulance rides and stuff?
The ambulance rides, you get all that stuff. And back then, they were doing the paramedic licensing as well. So, you went to that course of instruction and you lose a few guys because they're teaching dirt medicine and street medicine at the same course. So you had to deconflict those things and how you handle all that trauma. And there was a lot of medicine that was revamped since then. I went in 98, 99 time frame.
Dude, what's coming off the battlefields in both Iraq and Afghanistan I remember when I first got in, and even my sister, who's a nurse practitioner, if you use the word tourniquet, they're just like,
oh, yeah.
Like, you better get that thing off.
Yeah.
And now it's like, tourniquet there, tourniquet there, tourniquet there, tourniquet there. Like, get those suckers on there.
Yeah. Well, and the tourniquets even at the time, like the one that I carried around as an issue ranger, it wasn't
Probably
a fucking tourniquet. It wasn't a tourniquet. It was that thing with the little teeth, and you pulled it.
Yeah.
It was garbage.
It would have been a shit show.
Yeah, but anyway, so after you do your medic course, you had the free fall school, and then you eventually arrive at the pararescue school, which is 100 days, where you take all these little individual skills that these guys went out and got certified in, and you combine those into what a pararescueman does, which is search and rescue and recovery and combat
So you do
operations.
all of that stuff before you get to the...
Yeah.
Is that PJU?
Yeah, PJU,
Okay.
the PJ school. It's the Pararescue and Combat Rescue Officer course. Of course, when I joined Pararescue, there were no officers.
Well, now there's crows. You got to deal with those guys.
It was part of the appeal, I think, for me. Having carried a lieutenant's fucking coffee into the field as an RTO, I had a healthy amount of disdain for some of the officer corps. I had great officers too, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but I liked the idea of an all enlisted career field. You know what I mean? Like, because I felt like it was even more focused on just the J's. You know what I mean? Like, if my boss is a PJ and that's his whole job, and he's an enlisted guy, then he understands me implicitly,
and the pipeline, and how the sausage is made,
all that stuff. Yeah.
So what do you do at PJU?
Well, it's a combination of all that stuff. I think it initially starts off with PJ medicine, and I don't remember the flow exactly. Like I said, it's been since 2007 since I was there. But it starts off with like PJ medicine, and then you get into jump operations and mountaineering and land navigation, stuff that they should know, but there's a little bit of survival in there as well. Assisted evasion, because that's what we do with pilots who punch out. You see BAT 2-1. The whole idea is to like hit the ground, recover anybody that you got to recover, or if you cannot airlift them out, to be able to assist their evasion. So you become an evasion expert, you know what I mean? And so there's an evasion portion, and then there's weapons and tactics where we take the guys out to the range. And it's their first, a lot of the guys, it's their first exposure to shooting because they don't shoot in basic training in the Air Force.
Really?
No, they do duck hunt, man. It's it's like
It's a pretty solid game, though.
Well, I mean, they might have changed it since then, but when I was in the Air Force, they were still AETC was running the shooting range like it was duck hunt. And then when you did do your Air Force 9 mil quals, it was pretty much a joke. I think the security forces, SF,
Yep.
were the only
It's a
guys.
different type of SF.
Yeah. They were the only guys that were really keeping up regular quals besides PJs, you know.
Yeah.
And there could have been other career fields in there. But so it was like taking a guy who had maybe never even really touched a Beretta or touched an M4 carbine and teaching them in 2 weeks how to shoot tactically, how to get into a stack even, you know, kind of the basics of CQB is introduced. And then there's also an FTX portion where they're supposed to start working as if they're PJs. Now, when I got there right after 9/11. They wanted somebody with tactical experience to come in and help with this, you know, kind of revamp this new program. And I didn't know what to do because I hadn't necessarily been deployed myself. So I started just running a lot of long range, overland movements and operations, recovering and casualties. And then actually, like if you set it up so there's 2 clicks to your exfil, you got to carry that guy 2 clicks. You know what I mean?
It's
and
a
it
long
was
hike.
Look, it was brutal. It got to a point where I built it up so much that the guys were jumping into Magdalena out in New Mexico, doing in the field planning, and then executing 17-kilometer overland operations to recover pilots and do evasion stuff. And then the operations be ongoing. I ran it almost like a mini Ranger school. I would just keep it going and keep it going and keep it going and just really put these guys under a lot of stress because that's the only thing that I could do. And then a guy named Rich Oberstar came in later and he revamped that whole program and turned it into what they were seeing downrange. He's like, okay, you know, now we're bringing in more helicopters. You're standing alert, you know, and they built it up into what it became. But like when when it all first kicked off, I mean, the information I have was like, you know, was like Roberts Ridge. That's how things were going down. You know what I mean? So I taught tactics like that.
Yeah.
I taught guys how to shoot, maneuver, lay down bases of fire, shift fire, lay in intermediate support by fire positions. I taught infantry style tactics and then tried to incorporate the pararescue job into it when in reality what Rich did when he came in was flip that all around. He's like, this is what PJs do. And we know all these infantry style tactics.
It's amazing how much it shifted from the early days to even a decade later or beyond.
Yeah.
We had a massive, I would say, tactical shift in somewhere between, I'd say, 6, 7, or 8.
Yeah.
Due to people, catastrophic loss of life.
Yeah.
And like, you know, maybe we shouldn't be using Vietnam era tactics going forward. Maybe we should reevaluate why we're running into every room as opposed to clearing it from the threshold of the door.
Exactly. So, and that's what we were teaching, you know.
Yeah.
We were teaching the idea that, you know, one man through the door freaking take the path of least resistance and then you're just button hooking or following, you know what I mean? And you're moving to points of domination in the room. And then, you know, I started talking to some guys and that's what I learned and that's what I was teaching. And then you start talking to guys who are out there actually throwing lead and they're like, nah, we don't do that shit anymore.
Yeah.
We don't
run
that
into that
stuff.
room anymore.
Yeah. And a lot of things changed, and it was nice nice, but at the same time, I ended up at the PJ school for so long that it soured me. I within a year and a half of being there, I was just dying to leave. I was like, I got to get out of here. I hated the students. I hated them. I hated the training environment, and then I knew that guys were out there deploying, and I wanted to deploy. I even got on the horn with the 2-4 and like started trying to get myself onto a deployment, like not even talking to my commander. You know, I was trying to backdoor the system every way I could. I put in a package for the 2-4 without a commander's recommendation letter. That came in back and bit me in the ass. I mean,
I can see that happening.
And I think that with a leadership that's like, cut that shit out, and you keep trying to do that, it really does. It really does put a damper on their opinion of you. You know what I mean? Regardless of if you're going to do your job and you're good at your job every day, regardless of that, you're a freaking pain in the ass. Yeah. And I was, and I am a pain in the ass. I want what I want. And that's why I think eventually I decided to leave, you know, because my personality fit in certain ways. When we were doing operations, absolutely. Fuck, dude, I'm there. I'm with you. I'm on point. Off duty, in the office, anything like that, disaster. Like, my friends are my friends in spite of. I will tell you right now that all of my friends from the military, all my closest homies, are friends in spite of things that I did, not because of, you know, I was this great, you know, guy outside of work. You know what I mean? I try to be, but ultimately I was really selfish. Impulse control, again, was a huge problem. And just a handful. Like my commander, hey, I saw you riding your motorcycle without your helmet, you know, this weekend. And you know that's against UCMJ, so like put your helmet on. Roger that, sir. You're just mad that you have a bitch bike. Instead of just saying, yes, sir, moving out, follow the rules like everybody else, I said, it's because you have a bitch bike, sir.
They remember those
You know
things.
what I mean? And then nothing's ever my fault back then. And so I'm sitting here, you know, just being honest about like who I was and what kind of an operator I was. I think I was the kind of guy that, you know, when it came to like jumping out of planes and doing the do and stuff like that, guys were happy to work with me, you know, freaking good to go. When it came to interpersonal relationships or hanging out with me, you know, outside of, it was more like, let's see what fucking happens. Like, this guy's going to explode.
Let's wind him up and point him in the correct direction.
And that's another thing, dude. That's another thing. I would fight everybody's battles for them. If you had a problem with the chain of command and I liked you and you told me about your problem with the chain of command, I would fucking light the torch. I would light the torch and I would lead a charge, man. I would freaking... Man, is this going to go forever?
We can go as long as you
want. I
want.
love to tell stories, man. I love to shoot shit.
Fire away.
There was a time that our chief came to us at the PJ school and he wanted to have a vote on whether or not a female who was assigned to the unit got a beret and a shadow box when she left the unit. And everybody in the room was opposed to it. We all knew it, but Captain Obvious here is the only one that was like, well, Chief, let me tell you. And I gave him my opinion. I was like, look, you were at the PJ school where these guys worked their asses off. They worked their asses off and they put up with a lot of shit, including like hazing from this guy. You know what I mean? And to earn that beret, they earn that beret. And it's something that they don't wear when they go to combat. I used to tell them all the time, the beret isn't it. Your job doesn't stop when you don that beret. It's just something that tells other people from a really far distance that you're special. Because you are fucking special. You know what I mean? I was like, and now we're going to give that to somebody who hasn't earned it in a shadow box. That's something you give to a guy when he retires. Beret in a shadow box, a flag, rack of ribbons. You know the standard.
Yep.
I was like, there has to be some amount of respect for the things that symbolize us, you know? And I might not have said it as nicely, but that's definitely what I meant when I said it. Well, he pulls me out of the room afterwards, and he was like, I need you to support me on this because everybody else will support me. And I said, absolutely not. I'll support you on any lawful order, but you're asking me my opinion, and you're asking the opinion of all of these guys who've earned this beret. I said, it's just a beret in a shadow box to her. When you tell me it's just a beret in a shadow box, to her it is. To everybody else that doesn't have one, it is. But to the guys that actually fucking earned it, it's so much more than that.
Yep.
And that's why when the Army switched from the black beret to the tan beret, I was in the Air Force by then. And I was stationed in Iceland. I remember I called my homie. And I was like, yo, man, like, what's going on? And I called him on the unit line, you know what I mean? It's 505-5454-4353 if anybody wants to call the Ranger Battalion. But anyway, I called them and I was like, "What's going on?" And they had a gag order put on them. They weren't allowed to say anything.
Oh,
and he was
God.
like, "Look, man, if you call me at home, I'll tell you all you want to know about it." He's like, "But I'm not going to talk to over a live line." And there was a lot of stink about it. That this new what do you want to call him? The new commander, the overarching
Commanding general.
Yeah, commanding general had just said, "Hey, man, everybody gets a black beret now." Well, it doesn't mean anything to you. It doesn't mean anything to any of the guys that didn't have one before that. It's just a uniform change for them. It's another, $21.95. They got to shell out for a new cover. But to a Ranger, man, what an insult.
Yeah.
What an insult.
Yeah, definitely a different
And those are the
optic.
types of political decisions that you also have to live with and deal with in the military. You got somebody who doesn't have any idea of culture or tradition and something like that, or it doesn't care about it, who makes a blanket decision like that. And you're like, okay, this is what I got to roll with now. And we're still dealing with that stuff today. There's a shitload of guys, female Rangers. I've had my ass kicked by my big sister, who I know if she wanted to be a fucking Ranger, all you guys suck her big penis. She's gonna freaking do it. She's gonna this. I've seen her take grown men and dump them right on their fucking skulls. She did judo with us when we were kids. She's a badass. She had 3 wild ass younger brothers she had to fucking rein in. If she wanted to be a Ranger, she could absolutely do it. I got my ass kicked by a chick when I was a freshman in high school. I tell you, every dude whose ass I've kicked since then, you got your ass kicked by a guy who got his ass kicked by a chick. There you go. So
it happens.
It happens. So the culture changes, and it's like, how are you going to shift with that culture? You know what I mean? How does that affect you? And
How long did you stay in as a PJ?
for the better part of 10 years, I would say, between 2 enlistments on active duty, and then I did a reserve enlistment. It was supposed to be 6 years, but ended up just being 1.
What was it that made you, or what was it that changed your mind and you decided to hang it up and move on?
Okay, so I wanted to leave the PJ school, and the only way that I could seem to do that on my terms was to just leave active duty. They wanted me to re-enlist a year out from my
EAOS.
ETS, my ETS date. And there's a bonus calculation and all that stuff. Everybody's got a timeline in their head. If I do this many years to this date and that, and I'll get that money, and it takes me to this, and then retirement, right? So they wanted me to re-enlist and leave me a year short of retirement, a year short of 20. And I said, look, I'll re-enlist at the end of this year. I'll even do a no cost to the government move to my new assignment. I said, and I'll re-enlist there at the end of it, and then that way I'm maximizing my bonus, and it takes me to 20, and then if I want to get out, I can get out. No, you can't. You can't do that. And I'm like, well, what are my options here? And they were like, well, you can turn down the assignment, which means you got to probably stay at the PJ school for another year. And I said, but I can re-enlist at the end of that year, and then get reassigned or whatever. And I had a new assignment. I was like, they were assigned to Moody Air Force Base. You just have to re-enlist to take the assignment. This is the leverage that they have.
Also known as the dangling carrot.
Yeah, man. Here's the assignment that you're asking for, that you want. You want to go there, but we want to make it so that we pay you less and do all this stuff. And I tried to negotiate with these guys, and you can't negotiate in the military. No. So I was like, well, what happens if I just turn down the assignment? I said, well, then you're up for force reduction. I said, and then what happens then? They said, well, you probably won't be force reduced because you're in a critically manned career field. I said, okay, I'll roll the dice. We'll see what happens. So within about a month, a force reduction letter comes in. And they're like, well, you can go to your commander, and your commander can maybe waive this. So I went to my commander. His name was Joe Barnard at the time, and I think
I know Joe.
Do you know Joe?
Yes.
So Joe's doing the Forge School down in Tennessee now. He's trying to help with some kids there, and he was my instructor at the PJ school. And he had heard some stories about me and my attitude and antics and behavior, and he had heard that Wil Willis is a fucking asshole. And I had no time for bullshit. What you and I, this laughing thing back and forth, man. If I didn't know you for a year Rich Oberstar can tell you this. He came to the unit. I went through PJ school around the same time as him. We were in some of the same courses of instruction. He showed up at the PJ school. I just watched him for a year. I was like, let's see what this guy's all about. And I swear to God, for a whole year, I just
That's a long
watched
grace
him.
period.
And then after a year, you know, I was like, okay, he's here to make changes. He's here to make things legit. He's here to freaking really work, because there were a lot of guys that were there to take a break. Because I'd never been over or anything like that. I didn't need a break. I needed somebody that was motivated, in my opinion, to like really get after these guys, really push a really great course of instruction. And so, you know, I didn't really talk to anybody, and they're like, you know, Wil Willis is a fucking asshole. Joe came out to the range one day, and I'm teaching pistol stuff, and you know, it's a pretty dynamic course of instruction for the students. You know, safety is a huge thing, and I used to kick guys off the range for doing stupid shit, send them straight back to the barracks. I'm like, you pointed a weapon at your own fucking face.
Yeah, you're done training.
I had
for
a
the
guy.
day.
I'm not kidding. I had a guy changing magazines on his 9mm. And he's doing like an admin reload or whatever it is, or a tack. He's got a round in the chamber.
Yep.
Drops the magazine.
Tack reload.
Tack reload, and he grabs a full magazine, and he's got the one magazine in his hand. He's got the full pistol in this hand. He's like, "What do I do with this fucking magazine?" And he looks at his vest, and I'm watching this happen. And he reaches with this hand, grabs the Velcro tab, lifts up. Stuffs the magazine in, drops it back down, and gets back on his gun. And I didn't say anything while it was happening. I fucking froze. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're watching something happen. Yeah.
And then the second he got back into that position, I was like, go ahead and freaking drop your magazine.
Clear and
the
safe,
weapon.
that bad boy.
I was like, you're off the range. I was like, you're off the fucking range. Now, that's the kind of guy I was. So Joe shows up to evaluate, you know, my course of instruction. And then afterwards, he takes me, you know, behind a Connex box, you know, and he's like, look, man, heard a lot of stories about you coming out here. He's like, I know you were one of my students. You know, you've been at this fucking PJ school for a long goddamn time. He said, you just keep doing what you're doing. He said, I don't care if you're a fucking dick. I don't care if you're a dick. As long as you keep teaching on point like that, he's like, just keep doing what you're doing. Stay out of trouble. Roger that, sir. Move on. You know, move on. And we had that relationship. And when it came time to re-enlist, you know, for that force reduction thing, Joe was my commander. And he's like, look, man, you either want to be in the Air Force or you don't. I'm going to force your hand on this. He's like, I'm not going to make this decision for you. You have to make the decision. And everybody knew that I had been in Beer Fest kind of fucking around on leave, you know what I mean? And everybody knew that I had gone to command-directed anger management, where I was kind of turned on to like the idea of learning to express myself through acting classes, and that I had gotten a few calls about it, because New Mexico at the time was like popping off with some stuff. So I'm not going to say that outside of the Air Force there wasn't this interest in this other thing. You know what I mean? So I think he did that, and I was like, look, sir, I was like, I said, I feel like I'm not appreciated. You know what I mean? In the sense that, you know, why can it seemed like there was some favoritism in a lot of ways. It seemed like there was, I just felt, and again, this is my borderline. It's all conspiracy theories up here. You know what I mean? Like, oh, they're doing this to me because of this, that, and the other thing. And there's a lot of pointing fingers, and I never really pointed the finger back at myself and said, you know, you would probably be so much easier to work with if you got your personal life under fucking control. You know what I mean? And it wasn't. It was out of control, man. My personal life was a fucking mess, and and it ended up eclipsing other people's personal lives and getting involved in other people getting involved in my shit, and so it almost like a pariah. You know what I mean? Like, don't fucking talk to that guy. He's you know, great when you're freaking at the unit, but outside of that, it's trouble. You know, so. And then even when I got to LA, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of that. Like, I couldn't let go of that dude that I was off duty. I mean, that was my identity, to be a fucking the wild ass drunk who's getting into shit and fighting people up and down the streets of Albuquerque. And like, so, you know, it's only when you're laying on the floor, surrounded by your friends, pissing on your own fucking chest. I'm talking like straight up in the air and onto your own chest. And you wake up from that and you realize, man, I have really hit rock bottom. Like, this is it.
I have not experienced that. I'm going to take your word for that particular evolution.
Yeah.
What a small world, man. So I met Joe working with young PJs in Crows at the end of their pipeline. So I did about 2 years of military freefall instruction, and it was a bridge gap between what they got at the end of the pipeline and then really trying to get them operational. You know, all hey-ho, so jump, clear and pull, getting to the stack, navigating, landing appropriately, and then moving on with their mission.
So the AST portion. So AST came online somewhere, I want to say, between 2005 and 2007 when I got out. And that was all run out of Herbert Field Air Force Base. And they were sending all the PJs and all the combat controllers and all the Crows there where they furthered their education.
So this was way later. This is like 14, 15, 16.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I worked for a private company.
Oh, okay.
So they outsourced it, and Joe was the skipper. I met him for the first time, I think, in the middle of nowhere in Wyoming, where they were doing this remote camp where we flew in a Huey.
Yeah.
And we would go jump out of a Huey to these unknown DZs, and worked with him for a few years. He was awesome. I really like Joe.
Here's what I like about Joe. Joe also has had some things in his background, like PJ legend wise, that weren't necessarily, cast the greatest light. You know what I mean? Like
I trust men more with a touch of dirt under their fingernails.
Well, I mean, there was an incident with another PJ where they were jumping together, and the other guy frapped in, and so I think that there was a little bit of that shadow that followed Joe around a little bit. I know that he didn't get along with the first chief that I worked for at the pararescue school, and I know that he had some personality conflicts. I love Joe. Joe reminded me of a Ranger. You know what I mean? Like when I was a student and he was my instructor, he reminded me of like a no bullshit kind of guy. You know what I mean? And you could see him off to the side laughing and joking with the other instructors and having a good time. You're like, okay, this is a guy who's, when it's with the students, it's about that relationship. Yep. Student instructor, I'm going to hammer your ass or whatever. But he's really a real guy. I think I tried to do the same thing with the students, and they came back to the school to fight me. You know what I mean? They're like, fuck this guy, I'm going to kill him.
So it sounds like you made the choice on your own to get out because you were maybe eye on the ball out in the Los Angeles area.
Well, I had Ray Colon Lopez, who's now the Chief Master Sergeant of Enlisted Affairs at the fucking White House or something like that. He's got some crazy made-up title. I'm sure he wrote it for himself. And
sounds amazing.
I mean, Ray Colon Lopez came from the 24th STS to the unit, and he's very good at the business of the Air Force. You know what I mean?
I do.
I do. Know what I mean? He's very, very good at the business of the Air Force, as proven by his position now. And he showed up to the PJ school, and we had some conflicts, he and I. And he was always upset or angry about some, what I call political shit, fire extinguisher training. You know what I mean? Like you haven't done your fucking fire extinguisher training. You got to be signed off. I'm like, fuck, dude, unknit your eyebrows, relax. We'll get to that fucking all-important fire. So he had to enforce a lot of things he didn't like to enforce. And he was a little bit of a cowboy too. Like, hey, we're going to do the point break jump today. We're jumping at Lake Mead, 12.9999, and we're going to do a jump with fins and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, great. Do you have the waterproof altimeters? I'm jump master too. I know my regs. And he's like, no, man, we're going to count it off. I was like, you're going to count off.
Fuck you are.
Yeah. I was like, you're going to count off 9,500 feet of fucking
halo
altitude?
Jump where I'm going to count off.
I was like, no. I said, according to the regs, you cannot do a jump over, I think it was 5,000 feet at the time, 5,000 feet without waterproof altimeters. So unless you have waterproof altimeters, we're jumping at 3,500 feet today, and it's going to be standard RAMS procedures. And he looked at me and he was like, you're going to have to show me that in the regs. So I showed it to him, and he's like, damn, dude, you know your shit. And I was like, yeah. But I was also the dick for pissing on his fucking point break jump parade. Yeah. We got waterproof altimeters, and then we start jumping. And then the PPPM, the parachute program manager that came up from Lackland is duct taping fins to his legs, which is something that we had thrown out. I was like, we don't do that anymore. Look at this motherfucker. I was like, he's over. I was like, you're listening to this guy who's the PPPM, but look at him duct taping those fins to his feet. I was like, it's unauthorized. You don't do that. Oh, he's the PPPM. It's fine.
No, it's not.
Sure
That's
as
not
shit,
how that works.
Sure as shit, we jump This guy's freaking fin cones unraveled, and he's like,
Awesome.
and he flips over onto his back because I'm like, that's a horseshoe.
Oh, yeah.
That's a horseshoe. He flips over on his back, and he manages to get it cut away. You know what I mean? But that's the kind of thing I felt like I was battling with a lot of time. Like, yeah, I'm a cocky dick, but there's regs. You know what I mean? And in the Ranger Battalion, that's one thing that was really enforced.
Yeah.
You could be a cocky dick. You could be whatever. You could be a shitbird, whatever. But when it comes to like conducting operations or when there's regs that are set, you follow the regs. You know what I mean? You know, and for me, I thought that some regs applied and didn't. Obviously.
Of course.
There's the motorcycle thing. There's the hypocrisy. I mean, there is the hypocrisy. You know what I mean? I'm not
all
gonna
about
lie.
looking for gray area,
Yeah.
but black and white is very simple.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you're not doing a fucking halo jump
Yeah.
where you're going to count it off.
Yeah, yeah, and so there were little moments like that. And Ray, you know, I think once he found out that I was getting out, he sent me a sarcastic email from this company that was looking for a PJ to host a show called True Stories of Pararescue, and the email said, "This looks like it's right up your alley, Hollywood." Hollywood.
Yes.
Now, my teeth didn't even get fixed until I was in my 30s. So, like, the idea of being Hollywood to me was ludicrous. Like, I was the guy that chewed through the fucking concertina wire. Like, my call sign in the Army, Phil Simpow made this one up, was this, because my teeth were all over the fucking place. He was just like,
Snaggletooth.
yeah, exactly. So the idea of being Hollywood or anything like that was just like whatever. But I called the guy. I called this producer. I said, you know, my name's Wil Willis. I'm a former Army Ranger, Air Force Pararescueman. I have a lot of experience speaking in front of people, having hosted or emceed graduations and you know, just teaching in general. Yeah. And, you know, there's a certain amount of confidence that comes with, you know, being an operator.
And you're older too. It's
older. Yeah. And they were like, well, you know, do you have a reel? And I was like, I didn't know what that was.
But I mean, I have a fishing reel.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't know what that is. And they told me what it was. And I filmed a jump. I hosted a jump. We talked about the parachutes. We talked about the little wing suits and stuff that we were wearing at the time. And then I jumped out of the airplane and I did a little wrap up. You know what I mean? 3 minutes, edited it on my home computer. Shittiest footage you've ever seen in your entire life. Like and the guy who's filming it is literally holding the helmet of his, you know, his skydiving rig. You know what I mean? And I put it together and I sent it to these guys and they were like, "It's fucking fantastic."
Probably the first time I've ever seen anything.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah. They're like, "That's amazing. When are you coming? When are you going to be in LA again?" I was like, "Oh, as a matter of fact, I was going to be there tomorrow."
As you're looking for,
they're
your
like,
ticket.
"Really?" I'm like, "Absolutely. My brother lives in California, Northern California." I was like, "My brother lives in California. I'll be there tomorrow." They said, "Would you meet with us?" I said, "Absolutely." Hung up the phone, made a freaking flight, flew out to Burbank. These guys picked me up from the airport, drove me to these offices in Burbank where I met the owners of Morningstar Entertainment. And I sat down with them. I talked to them, and Gary and Panini. They were a really nice mom and pop operation. I had some crazy ideas. And then I got driven to this location where they handed me 6 pages of script about Cortez's push into the into the United States, how he got as far as like
Plot
Kansas.
twist.
Yeah, right. And they're like, memorize this. And they drove me up this hill and to this location that looked outdoorsy. And I memorized all this dialogue about Cortez. You know, it's like an operation. You know, memorize these facts real quick. And I regurgitated everything they said on camera. And they're like, take your shirt off. And I'm like, okay, this is starting to feel a little bit like that modeling gig I did.
And at that point,
They're
it would have
out
been
there,
done
people.
for me. I'd have been like,
yeah.
See
So
you
it's
later.
like down to my A shirt, what some people would call a wife beater, I guess.
Yep.
Down to my A shirt, and I'm kind of doing this thing, and they're like, they wrapped it up, and we go to get something to eat, and I remember that I was like, take me to McDonald's. I need some cheeseburgers. 5 cheeseburgers. That's my standard. So I get 5 cheeseburgers from McDonald's, and these guys are like, you're gonna eat that shit? I'm like, hell yeah, I'm gonna eat it. This is joy for me, pure joy. McDonald's to me is bliss. So I freaking go back to the studio, wrap things up, catch my flight out in the afternoon. About a week later, I get an email. It's a contract to host a TV show, not anything specific. And I signed
generic host contract.
Yeah, generic host contract. They paid $1,500 an episode if they ever made an episode of anything. And I sent it to a lawyer because I don't know anything about lawyering, legalese, or anything like that. And he was what do you call it? Real estate lawyer or something. And he was like, dude, it looks like a real contract to me. I'm like, should I sign it? He goes, is anybody else offering you a contract to be on TV? I'm like, no. He goes, sign that shit. So I did, and I sent it back, and then I filmed the sizzle for Deadliest Warrior. That's where I met David Baker from Forged in Fire for the first time in March of 2007.
He is the the weapons recreation
Yeah,
specialist?
he's the old fat guy that looks like Colonel Sanders.
Okay.
Yeah, David
I know who
Baker.
you're talking about.
Yeah. You know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the best way I could describe him. And then there's and that's where first time I met him and learned about what he did for a living. At the time, it was just props and stunts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He made props or provided props and stunts, and that's what he was doing there. He's providing the sword that we were using for our Deadliest Warrior or whatever. And it wasn't a sword that he made. It was something he commercially bought and so whatever. I met Dave and then fast forward, we filmed the sizzle, and then that turned into a sizzle for Spec Ops Mission. And then Deadliest Warrior became a thing, but with different hosts, because I ended up doing Spec Ops Mission for the military channel.
And I never caught a single episode of that.
Oh,
so what was
God.
that all about?
You know, it was really, they wanted Call of Duty in real life, I think, is what they wanted.
Did they realize that Call of Duty doesn't exist in real life?
No, and no matter how many times I tried to explain it to them, it was really like, you're going to be a big star. You're going to get 10% of everything that we make off of this,
Well, what was the premise?
The premise is that it was a demonstration of military special operations capabilities in a force-on-force, conflicting objective environment, I guess. It was a war game. It was a simulated war game where...
But you only had you.
Just me, and I had a pilot one time who I picked up and was able to help me like flank a guy, you know what I mean? But it was just me, against these other guys, and there was very limited intel, and so when I came into this, I tried to do like a 5-paragraph operations order for these guys. Like, this is how this is going to go down. Dude, within 2 minutes, they were like, what the fuck are you telling us right now? Like, we got cameras and shit to deal with. Like, you just do what you do and you film it and you just produce everything and you won't get any credit for it. So
sounds about right.
So that's how it went, and there was a Navy SEAL whose dad had been one of the founding members of DEV, you know what I mean? He was there, and he was the military advisor, and everything was a little bit behind as far as weapons and tactics. I'm bringing what kit that I had available to me. We're trying to make deals with Blackhawk or anybody that would supply this kit, and it's a lot of times it's about sponsorship and advertising, and then that's when you start to learn about demographics and ratings, and you're just trying to not look like an asshole.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't want to don't make me look like an asshole. Like, nobody does this stuff. And what you're asking me to do is outrageous. You know what I mean? And I did the best that I could with what I had. And believe me, the hate that came out.
From the military community.
No. Because my homies were super supportive. Like, all of my guys, all my dudes that love me in spite of were like, dude, it's cool, man. It's cool, Yeah, it's fine,
Yeah.
And you're like, look, man, I'm just trying to make a living, I was driving a cab in between episodes. I was driving a taxi cab in between episodes, or I'd get the odd contracting gig here and there. But it was like, okay, I can't contract all the time and do this and drive the cab and be in the reserves. And like it turned into a huge juggling match, which ultimately I think just the dream itself killed my marriage. You know what I mean? The idea of like, I'm doing this whole totally different thing and my infidelity, I'm going to be honest with impulse control problems. Those are the things that killed my marriage. You know what I mean? And me, I've always just been say yes to more things. Say yes to that. And I tried it and I didn't like it and it didn't go well. And I got angry and I fought with producers and directors, and Christopher Barnes, God bless his heart, man. He was the most patient producer or director I've ever worked with. Like, this guy was like, okay, Will, okay. Like, anytime I was losing my shit, he was like, okay, man. And he provided a lot of mentorship that I didn't realize was like, that was great until later. You know what I mean? A lot of times when you're in it, you don't see it. And I mean, I threatened to throw him into San Pedro Harbor. I was like, right on this fucking Zodiac. I'm freezing my ass off. I'm hopped up on fucking Vicodins because I had fucked my back up. We're doing like, I forget what we were doing. Like, it's like San Pedro. We couldn't dive in San Pedro Harbor. There's no way. It's like you have to call people and freaking get authorized. And you want me to dive San Pedro Harbor by myself with this like Draeger system and all this stuff? So
what could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, what could possibly go wrong? So they had to, and this is what another thing that I hated about Hollywood. They're like, well, we want to simulate you using this stuff because the guys provided it. And, we want to simulate it. And I was like, I was totally against it. I'm like,
you should go simulate going and fucking yourself.
Yeah. And I didn't want to do it. But do you know a Navy SEAL named Damian Werner?
By name. I don't know him personally.
I know him personally. I fucking love this guy. I love this guy. I love that everybody calls him Turkey Dinner. You know what I mean? I love him, and he's a guy that got out, and maybe not everybody loves him, but I really do enjoy the conversation I had with him. And he was one of those guys. I was sitting at dinner with him, and he was asking me how filming was going. And I'm telling him about it. We're, of course, teaching a live tissue course. So, like, I've got a foot in two different worlds, the real world and the fucking fake world.
Two very diametrically opposed words.
Diametrically. There's no violence of action at all in anybody's vocabulary in the producer world or director world. So I'm talking to him about this, and he's like, look, bro, you already sold out. You already sold out. He's like, sell out all the way. Do any of these fucking guys that are throwing stones at you pay your bills? I said, no. Nobody stepped forward and said, hey, man, I'm going to help you out with your child support this month. Or, hey, man, I'm going to help you out with your car payment this month. Nobody ever said, hey, man, I'll give you a job so that you don't have to do this thing that I hate that you're fucking doing. Nobody ever said that. They just said, you're a fucking piece of shit. This is garbage. You're a horse shit. Fucking fuck you. I hope you die. Like shit. Like some of the worst things that somebody who doesn't know you can say. And you're like, what? Man, and it hurts, man. Like, you don't think that it does, but you learn to, like, blow past it, I guess, But I'm not good at it because I do have a personality disorder that makes me fucking engage. So I did it, and I didn't like it, but sometimes was fun, sometimes wasn't, but I was learning about filmmaking at the same time. And which is what I really had an interest in, was storytelling. Everybody knew that I was the guy when it came to like movies. If you had a question about a movie, fucking come and ask me. I'll hook you up. The line, the person, the actor, the freaking, sometimes the director, producer, like I was into it. I had like 400 DVDs when people had 3. And that was my hobby, storytelling, writing, freaking, bullshitting. And that's what I was good at, and what I really realized that I could get into in the entertainment business. So really, at the same time that I was doing my thing, I'm watching all these guys, just like you watch your leadership. Who's good at what? What does that guy do? What does that guy do? How do I get that guy's job because he's above the line? He's getting paid residuals on this shit. And I didn't realize that I was producing my own content. I didn't realize that I was my own cameraman. I didn't realize that I should have been also on the ticket.
They all realized that, though.
But they all realized that. They all realized the first TV show I ever did, I got paid $9,500. You know what I mean? In total. And then when I kind of raised a stink about the residuals, the 10% back end, if you read the contract, it's after recoup of the cost to make the show. Guess what? They never recoup the cost, and it's 10% of net, not gross. So I think I got one residual check for $13. And then I signed up to do another TV show with the same production company called Triggers Weapons That Change the World. And I got paid a little bit more. Same 10% thing that I knew I wasn't going to get paid on. But at that time, it was a part-time gig because I was now the director of operations for this company, and they were filming on the weekends and when I had available time. It was according to my availability. And it was more of a standard hosting gig. But now I'm hosting a show about guns. Oh, my God. What a community.
I do.
I don't know everything about every fucking gun.
Nor does anybody.
Nor does anybody. But if you got your favorite and you know everything about every gun.
Yeah, God help you if somebody else touches on your favorite.
And I maybe covered it very kind of loosely. Oh my God. I had a guy called Washington Manhunter on the, I'm going to fucking dime him out. Washington Manhunter. I don't know what that means, but that was his screen name on the Field and Stream website. I did an article for Field and Stream where they sent me a bunch of questions. I typed up my responses and I sent it back. Well, they edited my responses. And you know, in the military, timelines and all of that shit counts. What do you think they edited out? All those little details. I went to this during this period of time, this during this period of time, this during this period of time. And then this guy, Washington Manhunter, comes out of the woodwork. I'm in D.C. going to the NRA Museum to do the second season of Triggers. They were doing a whole fucking premiere at the NRA Museum, which was awesome, by the way. And my brothers and sisters had flown out to D.C., my roommate at the time had come up, you know, my girlfriend's mother had come down. It's a big fucking deal. And this article comes out, and my brother's like, dude, have you read the blogs? Have you read the comments? I'm like, no, I haven't read the comments, man. And he's like, don't read them.
Well, now you have
Why
to.
the fuck did you tell me not to read them? Because now I'm going to go read them.
Yeah, now you have to.
So I go and I start reading these comments, man, and this one guy kicks off this whole thing, and he's like, this guy's a fucking fraud. It's like, no fucking way was he an Army Ranger and an Air Force Pararescueman and did all this shit during these periods of time. Yeah, he's a fucking horseshit Hollywood fag, stolen valor. And look, man, that's all I got at this point. I didn't deploy. I don't have fucking rack of red ribbons and medals and fucking Purple Hearts and fucking blown off limbs or horror stories like that. I just got my DD-214 and what I legitimately did in the military. And this guy's fucking trying to strip it all away and say that it was garbage. And that's the first time that I ever responded to somebody on the fucking internet. And I lit him up. I was like, fuck you, dude. I was like, here's what happened. And I posted the entire interview as I wrote it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, you want to come at me, man. And he did. He tried to snap back a couple of times.
Really?
Yeah. And then finally somebody was like, Will's right. During his era, guys went to fucking Ranger Battalion before they ever went to Ranger School. You know, that was his big hang up.
Yeah.
Was the idea that I was in the Ranger Battalion.
I've worked enough with Rangers to know that happens all the time.
Yeah. But this guy, in his day, he didn't go to fucking Ranger Battalion or whatever. And I think he's probably a Vietnam era guy where there was no Ranger Battalion. You know, I mean, 3rd Ranger Battalion didn't even come online until October 3rd in 84, October 3rd, which is ironic because Mogadishu was October 3rd of 93.
It's those guys, we'll call them legacy soldiers.
Yeah,
who don't realize that there's an evolution past when their ETS was.
Yeah. And so that's when I really became like one of those guys that's like, look, man, I've got the legitimate shit. You know what I mean? You want to look me up. You want to look up my background, just my military background. Go for it all day long. I got the DD-214s. I kept all my shit tight. I'll show you my little book that I got taught to maintain with all my certificates, all my orders, my 3-ring binder,
I got one too.
All my orders, everything. I got the orders that sent me and 5 other guys to Fort Benning, you know, from Oakland. I have records of that stuff. Where's yours?
Yeah.
Where's yours? Don't come at me because I'm not showing up coming at anybody else. I don't come at anybody else unless it's just bullshit right away. You know what I mean? If it's bullshit to my face right away, but I don't go out and say, fucking Andy Stumpf is full of shit. You know what I mean? Because I don't know anything about you, but I know that you were a SEAL. And then I listen to one podcast you did and I make all these judgments about who you are as a fucking person.
The only time I'll go after people is when they'll say shit like, yeah, I served in Vietnam at SEAL Team 3. I'm like, oh, you mean the SEAL team that got commissioned in the fucking 80s?
Yeah. and I've called people out on stuff, you know what I mean? Like when I was doing we talked about the veteran transition. I did a documentary in 2016 called The Transition Project. I rode a motorcycle across the country, a cafe racer with a sissy bar.
Sweet.
On it. And I interviewed Marty Scovelin Jr., Lindsay Harden. I just saw her at Sorinex. I interviewed Antonio Ruiz, who's the founder of Regroup Foundation. One of the guys from Team Red, White, and Blue in Colorado, I talked to him, and I just started meeting all these veterans, and and it was just like, anybody that wants to talk, I'll talk to you, because I needed to talk to somebody. And then I met this guy who in Vegas, he's like, yeah, I was in the battalion, you know, whatever. Here's what I'm going through with the VA and stuff, and all of these claims. And then when I met him, I went to a coffee shop with him and his daughter and his weird friend, and some of the things that he was saying didn't really
Started
jive.
to unwind a bit.
Yeah, and I'm at the end of this ride. You know what I mean? And I'm in Vegas, and I'm meeting up with Tyler Gray,
Yep.
who is a legit Ranger, and I had met while I was teaching emergency trauma care stuff.
He and I got injured on the same target.
Did you really?
Yes.
I did not know that, man.
People don't realize that he and I know each other.
What a fucking wonderful human being that
Yeah.
guy is. I love that guy.
I got shot in the courtyard. He got injured on the other side of the door that I was going to be holding security for the breach on.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So I was in town and I'm visiting, this guy, and I'm also supposed to meet up with Tyler, who's a legitimate Ranger,
Indeed.
blown up in Afghanistan. And then I got this schmuck who's telling me a line of bullshit, and I just walked out and I asked him to leave the coffee shop. I said, I need to talk to you outside. And when we got outside, I was like, I didn't want to embarrass you in front of your daughter. I said, but what you're telling me is a lie. You're fucking lying to me. And there's no reason to lie to me about any of your fucking military service. There's no reason. If you were in the military and you're having a hard time, you're a veteran, there's no reason to inflate anything you did. I'll be the first person to say I'm the most highly trained, unopened G.I. Joe in the fucking world. You know what I mean? I've had more fucking combat training than anybody who's never gone to combat.
I like that unopened G.I. Joe.
Yeah, man. I'm on the shelf. I'm just some collector's item. You know what I mean? Like, look how good that fucking G.I. Joe looks, man. Let's put him on camera. You know what I mean? But the real G.I. Joe is like over here. He's had his fucking legs switched out with another G.I. Joe's fucking legs.
Oh, God.
And that's the real guy. The guy that's fucking been played with hard. You know what I mean? So I always recognize that. And this guy, to be claiming that he was anything other than what it was, I just called him out on it. And I was like, we're not going to talk. I'm not going to do an interview with you. And I said, and you should be ashamed of yourself. You know what I mean? Because if you're ashamed of your service, the service that you did, then you should be ashamed of yourself. Nobody should be ashamed of their military service unless they did something that was illegal or compromised their integrity, overall while they were there. So,
couldn't agree more.
And then I had a guy in Cocoa Beach, Florida, when I was driving a cab, a PJ student, this is hilarious, a PJ student tell me a story about me to me, as if the thing that he was telling me happened to him and me together. And my homie Jim Sluter is the guy. He's the one that brought the kid over. He's like, you got to hear this story. You got to hear this fucking story.
I'm assuming this man knew.
And Jim knows who I am, but it's long hair, fucking. I'm driving a cab, and basically I'm like smoking a cigarette, not PJ like at all. I'm in the dregs now, and this guy launches on this story about how I gave him a heart palpitation while he, by PTing him while he's at the PJ school or something like that. And I'm listening to him tell this story. It's a true story. It's a true story. A student started throwing multifocal PVCs. When I had him doing lunges for leaving his ID card adrift in like the copy machine, you know what I'm saying? Like I had him doing lunges and he started throwing PVCs. And when we went to the hospital, I took him to the hospital. He ended up having a heart condition. Well, this guy's telling me this story as if he was the guy. And Jim is laughing because he's got a lot of comedy going, but I'm just straight-faced listening to this because I can't believe it's happening. And Jim is dying. He's dying. He can't hold it in, man. And the more that Jim laughs, the more this guy ramps up the story, right? Because as storytellers will.
Yep.
And then he gets to the end of the story, and I said, "You're a fucking liar." He goes, "What are you talking about? Who the fuck are you?" I said, "I'm Wil Willis, motherfucker." I was like, "You're a fucking liar. You just told a whole fabricated story. It's a true story, but you weren't there. It wasn't you. It was another fucking guy. How can you sit there and tell me that story to my face?" And Jim fucking fell on the floor of the bar. He was laughing so fucking hard.
What did that kid do?
He walked away. He was ashamed. He fucking walked away. And I was like, "Get the fuck out of here." Like, there was nothing else to be said after that. It's not, I don't even remember the guy's name.
There's no debate.
There's no debate to be had. There's nothing. It's just like, go away now. Like, it's stupid. Like, what? And I'm not saying I've never walked into a crowd and like said some stupid shit where everybody's like, "Okay, you need to shut the F up. Like, you're a retard. Like, you are a social hand grenade. Get the hell out of here." I have been that guy, but I'm also the guy to be like, "Oh yeah, that's dumb. I shouldn't have done that." Yeah. So, There's a lot of stuff like that.
How did Forged in Fire come about?
I was going to college. It's really a long. Here's how I think it came about, and then there's how it did come about. I was going to college for film, and I had left everything, contracting everything, to just focus on college, and I was living off the VA. I mean, it was rough. It was rough. You know, I had no money. I was starving. I took a job at a gym. I'm fucking personal trainer, and you know, I fired clients. I was like, I'm not working with you anymore. And people were paying.
That's the move, though.
Yeah,
that is the move.
Yeah,
get rid of the shitbags.
Yeah, but my management didn't see it that way.
That
they were like,
I can understand that. You were probably a subcontractor.
Yeah, exactly. Because they're charging $150 a month to work out with me, but I'm only getting 29 of them. You know what I'm saying? And that, yeah. So you know, when I fired a client for like just being lazy, like I'm not gonna freaking waste my time to come here and just chit chat with you. You know, as a female client, and I'm like, it's not my bag. I don't care. You're not good looking enough for me to freaking come here every day and just watch you schlep around. Like you hired me for a purpose. And that's the kind of attitude I brought to the training game. Like, we're here to work. So anyway, I was doing that shit. I got fired from my personal training job for not being a team player. In other words, not making them more money. And I was cool with that because I had just picked up some contracting work, again, teaching TCCC. But it was a conflict because I would have to drive and then come back to college. And then my college was pretty strict about not missing classes and stuff like that. And to tell you the truth, I'd rather be, focusing on my education.
When you say film, are you talking about the mechanics of how it is made? I mean, what do you...
Well, I went to film school specifically to become a screenwriter.
Okay.
You know what I mean? But the film school that I went to, the New York Film Academy, it was the first bachelor's program that they had for screenwriters. So it was me and 2 other veterans, 2 Navy brothers, and then 5 other guys, from all over the place. And let me tell you, they were introduced to a whole different way of like behavior in the classroom, expectations in the classroom. If you showed up without pages, you're supposed to have 10 pages. You showed up without pages. I'd be like, dude, what the fuck where are your pages? Like, I wrote 10. Where are your pages? Oh, I just couldn't come up with anything. I'm like, write garbage. I don't care. You know what I mean? So me and the Navy guys, I think we made it fun because we were a little bit appropriately irreverent. But at the same time, we were also very professional. Like, I would have the guys over to my house, doing writers groups and stuff like that. I took it seriously. I really wanted to be a screenwriter in the business. And then, I think when I was going to college in the middle of that summer, I had an agent from the other 2 shows that I did. And he saw me at the gym one day, like schlepping around, picking up fucking lazy motherfuckers' weights, like re-racking weights for people. And he saw me and he was like almost ashamed, you know what I mean? And I had turned down jobs like, are you tougher than a Boy Scout? I'm like, this is just a show that's supposed to make adults look like assholes. I'm not involved in that. I turned down some stuff outright. And stuff that was like guaranteed money. Mm-hmm. And so he didn't understand my attitude towards the business, because when I got into it, I was like, I want to be successful. I want to make money. I want to be able to sustain myself in this business. That's what I'm all about.
And he probably heard that means you'll take everything.
I'll take anything and everything that comes across the table. And he's a good guy, really good guy. I got along with him well, but I think we had differences of opinion in what directions I should take my career in. And he's the experienced guy. He reps some big names. And so finally he hit me up with this thing, and he's like, yeah, Forged in Fire wants to, there's this thing, Forged in Fire, fly out to New Jersey, do a screen test and see if they like you. So I did it. And I looked exactly like I do right now. I put my hair up in a ponytail. I showed up with a beard, and I like jewelry. I don't know why. I like jewelry. And I think I had like my dog tags on, and there's another thing hanging around my neck, and then of course I got like rings on every finger, and David Baker was there, and Jay Nielsen was there, and I knew David from 2007, and then I kind of learned about the concept of the show. We did a screen test, and I got along with David. I got along with, just like I had before, I got along with Jay as a knife maker, and I was really honest. I was like, I know a little bit, because of Dungeons and Dragons. I played that shit, man. Somebody told me it was about devil worship. I was like, I got to explore this. You know what I mean? Like, let's get into it. I said yes to everything, man. So I went and did, you know, I went there with a small working knowledge of what's going on. Like I said Hammond line the first time instead of Hamon line. You know, I didn't know how things were pronounced, and they corrected me, and it was funny, and we had a good time, and they hired me. But you know, nobody knew what it was going to be. You know, it was just chopped with swords, you know, chopped with knives. And it was, you know, that's how I got hired. Here's how I think it really went down. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
In 2015, I wrote a treatment and did a sizzle for a show that I wanted to call What It Takes. And it was all about a military competition style show that kind of pulled guns back from the forefront of things and kind of pushed forward all of these other capabilities that guys have to be successful in special operations. And the whole idea is you break, you know, these competitors down into teams who have a proctor or somebody that shepherds them through and teaches them everything that they need to know, as if it's a, you know, an indoctrination course or a BUDS or something like that.
Yeah.
But like pulling guns back from the forefront. And it was so well done between me and my manager at the time that we got some meetings. You know, we got some meetings and I was able to pitch it to a company. And I remember Damon Zwicker was in the room, and then there was an executive named Corey Henson. And me and Russ, we went into the room, and man, I was ready. I'd even rehearsed the pitch, you know what I mean? Like, and when I get into a room, like, and I'm excited about something, I can really throw down, you know? And so I get in, and we got the video prepped. I have like all of this, you know, I've got the pitch deck put together, and I pitched this whole show. This is right around 19 December of 2015. And we get into a conversation, and then Corey's got a handbag that Damon kind of moved out of a chair and put on the floor. And she's like, "Oh, don't put that handbag on the floor." She's like, "Put it up here on my desk." And then my partner or manager, Russ, saw that it was an expensive handbag, and he goes, "Oh, typical." And I was like, and he's in the middle of a divorce, this guy. And he goes, "Oh, typical." And I give a double take, and she was like, "What?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, my soon-to-be ex-wife, same shit. The expensive stuff on the floor. Don't put it on the fucking floor, damn it. Like put it. Make sure you take care of that." He's being really sarcastic, kind of a dick thing to say
At an odd time.
And Damon looked at me because they hadn't met Russ yet. And I'd met Damon before, and I think I'd run into Corey maybe one time through some audition stuff. And Damon looked at me, and he looks at Russ, and he kind of gives this weird look, and Corey didn't know what to do, and we just kind of barreled through. You know what I mean? Just kind of pushed through, and the pitch ended up, and she had a lot of questions. We went for a whole hour. You know what I mean? If you got a meeting that goes for a whole hour where somebody listens to your garbage for an hour,
it's a good sign.
It's going pretty good. And then when we were leaving, like, you know, we're leaving, Russ pulls out his phone and he starts trying to show Corey all of his wife's expensive shoes. And he's kind of having this shit talk conversation. And me and Damon had already stepped out of the room. And I'm kind of watching this through the doorway. And Damon's like, "Get him the fuck out of there." And so I go in and I grab Russ. I was like, "Russ, we're fucking leaving." And I grab him, and dude, that was the end of our professional relationship, me and Russ. I couldn't believe, you know, how offensive he was being in that meeting. So I sent Corey an email about a week later, said, "Hey, I'm following up." And she sent me a nice email back. "Yeah, we're going to be looking at this into the new year. We really like the concept, we'll reach out to you then." Well, come January, there's an article on Deadline or whatever freaking entertainment magazine there is that she's left this agency where we pitched this thing and gone over to Fox. Okay, she left and went to Fox. I'm like, okay, whatever. About a month later, I get the call for Forged in Fire. I fly out, I do the thing. I meet the producer there, and we develop a relationship, and I just move forward as if nothing's happening. And then we come up for season 2 of Forged in Fire. Same producer, same supervising producer comes in and starts talking to me about this new show that he's working on with John Cena. With John Cena. He's like, "I'm working on this new show. It's called American Grit." I was like, that's cool. He's like, it's really kind of this like military thing where there's these military mentors and they're taking these guys and they're teaching them all this stuff. And it's a really great show. And I was like, that's fucking funny. I said, I pitched a show just like that to Corey Henson at whatever production kind, Electus, I think it was, in December of last year. He goes, that's my boss.
Oh, shit.
I shit you not. He said, that's my boss. I was like, are you fucking kidding me? And this guy had been kind of like pulling little bits of, like I had been getting like, oh yeah, this, that, the other thing, you know, through our relationship, we had talked tactics, we talked weapons, we talked about some of the difficulties of filming special ops mission. You know what I mean? Like we had talked about a lot of this stuff. And I remember Corey saying that they were looking for a vehicle for John Cena. You know, back when I pinched it, you know, she's like, he's one of these guys that we like. And I was like, oh yeah, it looks, you know, whatever. And I'm not saying that that's how it went down, because at any given time, there could be any number of guys who are out there pitching shows, and they could be similar. But I talked on the phone to Brent Montgomery. I showed Corey Henson my stuff, you know what I mean, before I got hired. So then I get hired by the same company that's filming this show with John Cena. And I'm like in a position where like, well, do I make a stink? Do I say anything? Do I say that like, hey guys, I think you might have like maybe crossed the line a little bit, or is this my idea? Or, I mean, I didn't know how to address it. And the thing is that you just say, okay. I mean, Christopher Barnes swore up and down that he pitched Friends, you know, before it was a thing, but he wasn't sure because there's so many different ideas out there. So I just let it go. I was like, you know, I don't really want to piss off the company that I'm working for. You know what I mean? And I just kind of, you know, stuck with the forged and fire thing. But I think that that's how it happened. That's how I think that it happened. I think I had pitched this show. They were going to run with it with somebody else. But if they hire me and I'm working for them, I can't make a stink about it because, you know, they could, I don't know. And again, this is me being a conspiracy theorist. But there are so many connections in so many little things in conversations that I had with all of the players involved, besides who was actually on screen. I'm talking about the behind-the-scenes players. Yeah. That were high enough up to make me believe, like, I think this was my idea. You know what I mean? And that's where guys get really wary about Hollywood. They get wary about sharing ideas and stuff like that. And it's maybe true, maybe it's not. I'm not sitting here making accusations because Forged and Fires is the show that built my house. You know, I live in the house that I live in because of that show, and I appreciate that it did go for as long as it did for me. You know what I mean? And
when did you start filming it? What year?
2015, April of 2015.
And 7 seasons you did, right?
Yeah, 7 seasons, and plus the beat the judges competition, the first 6 or 8 episodes of that.
So it had to have accelerated pretty quickly, because that's only, we're talking what, a 5-year time period, 7+ seasons.
Yeah. Well, what ended up happening was, you know, the first season was 8 episodes. Excuse me. The first season was 8 episodes because that's how they do everything. You know
yeah, they got to make sure there's an appetite.
You're going to dip our toe in the water. And it was 8 episodes. Nobody knew how it was going to go. You know, I was standing at the end of that table for the entire time that the guys were forging. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of standing for me where the other dudes are like sitting down. And I never stood in one place for so long in my entire life.
Well, that's why you had that little rubber pad that they tried to camouflage by making it the same color.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the answer to the standing. Stand on this. It's what chefs use. You know what I mean? But like even still, like if I took a step to the left or right in that first season, they'd be like, "Will, get back on your mark. Get back on your mark." So there was a little bit of growth with how I operate, how I host, how I move, and like, you know, even the direction of the conversations at the table. You know what I mean? Like, just do what you do, Will, captain of the ship. You don't know anything about knives, just ask questions. So I did. And that's what we did, and I learned a lot, and the judges learned a lot, but I'm also the kind of guy that questions things, you know? So there was a lot of conflict. The first season of the show, the last episode, I can remember we were having a deliberation, and in no way am I a judge. I'm not a judge. I'm not arguing with anybody about your decision compared to his decision. When it comes down to it, I want to get down to the logic behind the individual decisions, the why. And Doug Marcotte actually threatened he's like, I'll go to my car and I'll get my sword and you get your sword and we'll have a fucking sword fight. And he's like, this is my shit.
That's a hard pass on that.
And I was like, first of all, you don't have a fucking sword in your car because you don't have a car here. And I said this to him. I was like, second of all, I would fucking shoot you because I'm not an edged weapons expert. I do guns.
I manage distances a different way.
I said, but if you're getting this angry, about what's going on, you're this passionate about it, you gotta explain yourself, you know what I mean? You gotta be able to break it down. And that's what I would say that's what I'm an expert at, is just getting to the root of things by irritating somebody to the point where they just scream out why they're making the decision that they're making. And if I don't understand you, I'm just going to keep asking you questions like a little kid who just doesn't give up, And so, at first it was just me learning about the process of knife making, and then also I didn't like how reality TV a lot of times with like some of these shows turns into a catty little bitch fest. You know what I mean? Between the contestants. You know what I mean? And then and I didn't want that. I was like, you guys are here to highlight something that's supposed to be really fucking cool. You know what I mean? The idea of learning to make a knife, and it dates back to antiquity. You know what I'm saying? Like be professional when you're out there. You don't get to quit. Nobody gets to quit unless they're having a fucking heart attack, which is happening.
I saw somebody quit on the show.
Yeah. One guy was like, absolutely not. And I don't fucking blame him. I actually don't blame him. There was a guy that was a master smith, and the weather was fucking sweltering. He's an older guy, and it was a coal forge day, and it was just one of the hottest, most wretched days that you can possibly imagine. We were shuttling the smiths in and out of like poorly air-conditioned buildings, and he just had enough. I was like, you already got a name. You're already a successful guy. You don't.
No reason to die out here.
You're not proving that you're a good knife maker right now. You're proving that you're a good competitor. You know what I mean? That's really what it is. It's like the stamina and all that stuff. You're proving that you're good at the Forged and Fire competition, like Ben Abbott. You're good at the Forged and Fire competition. You know what I mean? But you were never a professional knife maker before that. You were just some engineer. And like, hey, let's say you were making really nice knives for your friends and neighbors. You weren't in, that's not what you're doing it for a living. You know what I mean? When Forged and Fire started validating smiths as professionals, that's when I had a real fucking problem. Like, if your validation as a knife maker came from competing on Forged and Fire, I'll say it to this day, it's still not a great validation, because you just made the best worst knife that day, or the least worst knife.
I was going to say, it's not like you're giving them the amount of time that they need to craft. They're basically jamming 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag as quickly as possible.
Exactly. And there are guys that are really exceptional at it, did great work. But even Bert Foster, when he was there, if you picked up one of his finished pieces from the time competition, the actual in our forge time competition, it was not...
It's a fuck show.
It's not a fuck show, but like, there's flaws. You know what I mean? Like he's got the best Forged and Fire knife, that I've ever seen.
Just don't look at it too closely.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, if you give him 3 hours,
exactly. But that's part of the competition, though. So here's that stress.
A question for you on this, because again, having worked on a TV show, which I'll never do again, I understand how much shooting actually goes into a 44-minute episode. We're talking days. So, of course, when the show starts, it's like, your time starts now, and the clock starts going down. Is that actually done in a day?
Well, the actual forging, when the clock is running, we only stopped the clock or reset the clock a few times, and it was after a heavy deliberation between the judges and the producers. You know what I mean? Like, if we put more time on the clock or something like that, and there were times that we had to extend the time, because nobody was going to finish the challenge. Like, you had to extend the time, give them another 30 minutes. So there were times that things like that were done. It was talked about with the smiths. You talk about it with the judges, with the producers. Is this fair? Is it legal, what we're doing, according to the rules and stuff that we've laid out?
That's right, because there's a cash prize at the end of that.
There's a cash prize, right? So, like, is it legal what we're doing? And legalities when it comes to those kinds of cash prize shows, that's federal law. You know what I mean? Like you're getting into some federal stuff. You know what I mean? Felony. You know, if you start violating that stuff, you're going to jail. You know. So remember Quiz Show back in the day? It was a huge hoax. They were giving the guy the fucking answers.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's that's why all this stuff exists now. You're not defrauding the American people. So then, so every now, while the clock was running, that shit was real. Like that, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily be there for the whole 3 hours standing up like we were in the first and second seasons.
Well, I mean, because I'm assuming there's multiple cameramen.
Yeah.
Do they go 3 hours straight, or do they get? That's
no,
what I'm saying.
They're
like,
swapping out the camera guys. Yeah. Dude, and I'm going to say this: for all of the heartache that I have with maybe some of the upper echelons of television production and the politics behind it, the fucking boots on the ground guys, the camera guys, the freaking audio, the PAs, the kid that's pouring freaking chips onto a paper plate for everybody to kind of just because he doesn't know any better to kind of everybody eat from the same paper plate. You know, like all those guys, they're jobbing out. You know, they're the 12-hour-a-day guys. You know, so again, like when I'm bitching about like how things are on set or how slow things are, these are the people that are actually jobbing out behind the scenes. They're the privates, they're sergeants, they're they're the guys that are making it happen, and then they just throw me up there for a few minutes, and you know, in a lot of ways, you reap all the scrutiny and glory from that in a lot of ways. When in reality, the focus should be on those dudes that are out there banging on those fucking knives. You know what I mean? And all of those camera guys, all of that crew that goes into those 50 people, I fucking love them, man. And it was like a forged family. And when they had issues like with getting travel pay or you know, stuff like that, when we moved from New York where they all lived to Connecticut and they still commuted to come up and work with us, you know, not getting travel pay and stuff, like I was the guy that said something. I was like, these guys should be getting this because the swag. You know fucking TV show swag. You've seen it fucking handed out. Yeah.
Tumblers,
Me
T-shirts.
and Doug Marcaida were buying all the swag. We bought all the swag. Anything that you see that has Forged in Fire on it, me and Marcaida were buying that shit and handing it out to the crew. And yeah, I intentionally skipped over some motherfuckers one year. You know what I mean? Yeah, you don't get a hoodie, pal. You know what I mean? Like, no, because this is actually what you should be doing. You know what I mean? Like, we're 7 seasons in, and Doug's buying the hats for everybody. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those attaboys that you're not entitled to. You know what I mean? But there just wasn't enough attaboy for the crew. Like, good job. You guys are doing amazing. Even like rap parties.
They're the spokes that make the goddamn wheel turn anyway.
Yeah, even like rap parties, the director, you know, Fonz Trinidad. I fucking love this guy. And he was a guy that's like, please, man, just like keep it contained, you know? Like one of the best fucking directors I've ever worked for. One of the most low-key guys. He handles everything in stride. And you want to talk about working with extreme personalities? Fonz is the dude, you know what I mean? And even Fonz, you know, would like fork out of his own pocket for like a rap party. You know what I mean? Like we're going to go to the bar, 2-drink limit, whatever. And, you know, whoever wanted to go could go and kind of decompress from the season, because there is a lot of stress and strain that comes from being every day on that set, you know, making that show. And it is dangerous in a lot of ways. People fall, people get hurt, weapons break. Doug Marcaida's in the hospital again. Doug Marcaida's brother cut his fingers off. You know what I mean? There's stuff that's happening. I got hit in the dick with a spiked bat on one of the unveils. It wasn't strapped down. It swung around and hit me right in the crotch. And then I picked the bat up and like beat something with it. And it was like, hey, tie this shit down. You know what I mean? I was angry, but at the same time, you know, I mean, things happen and you go with it, or you don't. You know? And I think for me, I love the crew. I love the crew. I love like working with those guys. And some of the producers were absolutely great too. But at the end of the day, you know, it does get to a point where, you know, I told an executive producer, I was like, don't think I'm not watching everything that you're doing. Everything that you're doing, every move you make, every decision that you make, and how you're maneuvering things around on this set. I'm sorry, I should say supervising producer. I said, don't think I'm not watching that. I said, I'm a smart guy, and you're doing what I want to be doing one day. I want to be writing and producing my own stuff. I said, I'm watching. You know, so just keep that in mind. You know what I mean? I'm not just some dude that sits up here and is content to say something that you've scripted for me. I mean, I'll read through the script, but I'm not going to say exactly what you want me to say. I'm going to make it mine. and anything that was at that table. Rarely scripted, the conversation. It never scripted, I'm going to say, between me and those judges. Every now and again, I'd hear something, maybe through my tinnitus, producer screaming out to ask one of the judges this one thing. And I would get irritated if we covered it already. Like, we already covered that. I'm not asking again. But you have to understand that they just need to see me asking that again so they could put that content on
If
there.
a camera wasn't on you, did it actually happen?
Yeah, and so that's the balance that you have to maintain, you know what I mean? And understanding that there's a relationship between not only what's going on competition-wise and the integrity of the competition, but also what's going on business-wise, and like, how are we going to turn this into a show? You know what I mean? If 3 guys quit,
It's rough.
and one guy wins, I mean, that's not really, and the guy wins by default, it's not really a TV show, so they always had to fight that battle. And again, integrity is a big thing for me. It's huge for me. And I have been a man of little integrity at times in my life. I have been a guy who lied, I've betrayed, I've been stabbed, I've been lied to. I'm a human being, man. And I'll tell anybody, like, yeah, I fucked up a lot of things. I did some shitty things. But at the same time, I can acknowledge that. I can go back to those individuals and be like, hey, yeah, it was fucking terrible, man. I still got to talk to Roger Sparks about, like, the way that I felt about our interaction as a student instructor. When he had already been deployed as a Marine and stuff like that, I was fucking hard on that guy when he came through the PJ school. And he got concussed one night pretty badly on a jump that I jump mastered, but we got bad winds. And then later on, he ended up having some other things where he was paralyzed for a period of time and stuff like that. And for some reason, I always go back to that jump that night, and I called that guy a pussy and everything else in the world to try to motivate him to keep going. Negative reinforcement was my thing. So anyway, I've been that guy, but integrity is a big deal to me. You know what I mean? And that American flag hanging on the wall behind me on Forged in Fire is my American flag. And, it represents not just me, but my belief in my values, my country, it's just a lot, represents who I am as a person. And every time that's behind me, I remind myself, like, be the better version of yourself. You know what I mean? Don't be the guy that sells out all the way. You can't be the guy that sells out all the way.
You can't be. There's just consequences.
Yeah. And I'm just not. And then I started to realize that maybe the most important thing to these producers wasn't my true and valid opinion on everything from safety to weapons engagement and my knowledge of combat. It was just the titles that went along with my name and the naked face that they could put next to the bearded faces. You know what I mean? It's about demographics. It's about hitting those those numbers. We already got 3 guys with beards. Shave yours off. I've never felt more emasculated in my life than when I showed up on set one season and I had a beard and it was very neatly trimmed. And the supervising producer just came in, didn't even pull me off to the side in front of the whole crew. He's like, shave that beard. And I said, not going to happen. And he said, you have to. I said, no, I don't. I don't have to shave my beard. I was like, I'm not shaving it. And so we filmed the whole day with me and the beard. Well, that night I get a call from my agent. I get a call from the supervising producer from before, the guy who had worked with me on the first 2 seasons. And they were like, you have to do this. I'm like, I don't have to. I said, would you tell a woman, if a woman had grown a beard, would you come in and tell her fucking shave it off? Would you? I mean, are we crossing line? And like, it's a bad parallel, but it's about the overstep. It's about the overstep. It wasn't even like, hey man, let me explain the situation to you. Can you please shave the beard off? It was just like, shave that fucking beard. I'm like, no.
Yeah, absent any explanation or why.
So the next day I shaved the beard. So I shaved the beard that night. Next day, how the fuck are we going to film? What happened on day one? There's no continuity. I showed up. The entire crew was flabbergasted. They're like, dude, you buckled. You shaved. I'm like, well, I talked to my wife and she said, better to have a job than not have a job. And so I did, but it was offensive to me, you know what I mean? And there were little offenses like that, little things where somebody who had never been trained for combat said, well, in combat,
Yeah.
Stay in your lane, pal. That's not your lane. You're not a combatant at all, nor have you ever been. So for you to say in combat and act like you have any kind of valid points to bring up, I'd like to see the credibility behind that. Where's your certificate of training from the Boy Scouts of America? Where's your certificate of training from anything that you're saying you have trained combat or trained for combat in? Like, did you go to an advanced fencing course? Let me see the cert. You know what I mean? And then you can say in combat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I had a lot of heartache with these guys, you know what I mean? And there is a lot of ego involved in the knife making community. There's a lot of ego. And just like any other community, you know, these guys fucking give each other shit and they give each other a hard time. But I think ultimately, you know, getting somebody to stay in their lane, even me, having received more classroom instruction than anybody on the making of knives and swords in the history of the world, I'm going to go ahead and say. Nobody's just stood there and listened to lecture more than me about knife making. It doesn't make you an expert just because you're next to it or learning about it even.
I could not agree more.
Yeah, so for these guys to start giving their expert opinions on combat operations or expert opinions on trauma even, you know, I'm a tactical emergency trauma care specialist, bro. I'll tell you how Jesus came back from the dead. I'll tell using nothing but what I learned as a combat trauma specialist. I will tell you how Jesus came back from the dead, and I can also explain how it's a miracle because it was. It's a miracle of medicine, is what it was. I mean, it's a sucking chest wound that got sealed. That's it. It's a sucking chest wound, and asphyxia that was relieved the second they took him down from the cross and put his arm down, and that skin covered that hole. Wrapped him up, protected him from hypothermia, put him into a hole where they're sealed shut permanently, and it took him 3 days to dig his way out.
I have not thought about that from that perspective.
A lot of people are going to be really pissed when they hear that that's how I explain the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But I wrote a whole paper on it and submitted it to George Washington, some guys I knew at George Washington University, and I was like, I think that this accurately explains the resurrection of Jesus Christ using trauma care. You know, the whole idea of like, you know, he was already dehydrated, he had already been beaten, he was already hypovolemic, he was already pre-hypothermic, and then you hang him on a cross. Crucifix means to asphyxiate. You know what I mean? You hang him on a cross to asphyxiate, and then when he's not fucking dying, you give him a sucking chest wound, makes him look dead, rapid shallow respirations, increasing heart rate so fast you probably can't even feel the pulse. All those things, all those signs of shock. And the second that you pulled him down and that mobile skin covered that injury on his chest, you just sealed up that wound. And then you wrapped him up in cloth. And you put him in a nice toasty cave.
I'm going to be honest with you. This is a topic I didn't think we were going to cover today.
No. But I don't know. I don't even know how we got here. But what I'm saying
talking
is
about expertise.
Yeah, but you're talking about like your expertise and staying in your lane. Well, I have studied trauma care for so long that I can take all of those principles that I learned and apply them to something like that and say this is a reasonable explanation that doesn't involve, you know, some people's perception of the miracle. Okay, yeah. And it was a miracle in some senses, but you know, that's how it was explained to people back then. You know what I mean? And so you have this expertise in all these different areas, and you, like, I start learning, you know, about knives from these guys, and then I talk like I'm an expert, which could have been offensive to them. You know what I mean? But it's my job as the host of that show to question everything that those guys say. Why? Why does this matter more than that? Why does this matter more than that? And then I have, again, the type of memory where I'm just going to remember everything that you say, every justification that you have, every time that this blade wins over this blade for that reason. I'm freaking logging all that in my head because I've done military weapons testing. I've done testing and evaluation. I know about measurement of performance. You know what I mean? I was an instructor at the PJ school. I had to go to all those Air Force egghead courses where you had to learn about all that crap. And then somebody just on a whim says, well, the handle's more comfortable. And you know, in combat, it's really important to have a comfortable handle on your weapon.
What is the goofiest shit you saw occur during those 7 seasons? You had to have seen some hilarious shit occur in that Forge.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest with you, I view Forged in Fire almost as a comedy. I watch it like we were talking about earlier today. I can't fucking believe the number of people who, given a ridiculous timeline, go, I've never tried this before, but I'm going to go with this new technique.
Well,
or
that's
shit falling apart. I die laughing.
Well, it's not funny because it's tragic at the same time.
I see it as complete humor because I am not the one living through it.
Dude. So it got to a point.
Funny for me, not funny for them.
Exactly.
I get it.
Exactly. Like I always tell my wife, like there are things in this world that, like, when they're happening, worst thing ever, worst thing fucking ever. But when you get through it and you look back on it, it's hilarious. Hilarious, best thing that ever fucking happened to you or whatever. But while it's happening, terrible. You know what I mean? That's how people who are good at dealing with trauma move forward. You're able to laugh and move on. But I guess the funniest shit, I don't know, it's just little snippets here and there. I don't know that there was any one moment that was like so hilarious that I could get over it. Again, I think that I was more concerned about somebody hurting themselves.
There's a lot of shit in that room that could damage people severely.
Yeah. I mean, I was so worried about these wild ass guys like hurting themselves with equipment that they were either unfamiliar with or completely ignorant about. You know what I mean? I've never, like you said it in the car, I've never run a welder before. Yeah. Like, okay. And it got to a point.
Or a power hammer.
Yeah.
That was another one
hammer.
that surprised me.
Well, and here's the thing. That's a $10,000 power hammer in the back of the Forge. Not everybody can afford to have one of those.
That does explain quite a bit of that, actually.
And then, so I think the funniest thing, some of the guys were fucking hilarious because I love it when they crack back. You know, when you're talking shit and they can hear you and then they crack back to you.
Perfect.
I love that stuff, but it doesn't always make the show. You know what I mean? Because, they're trying to, tell a certain story.
Yeah.
And it's the same story over and over. Here I am. Here's what I've gone through. Here's what I'm trying to do today. And I hope to be a great competitor in all this. And then the judges judge. I never understood how a guy could show up after 5 or 6 seasons of this thing being out there not knowing how to forge weld. That could be one of the bigger complications that's
could be. How about is likely going to be
built into the competition. So you've already set yourself up for failure. That was the funny stuff to me. Like how a guy could just come in and like totally set himself. You know what? We had one guy come in during one of the partner competitions and he was a high energy guy. He got in there, he was forging and carrying on and like having a good ass time. And then the next day, he fucking bolted. I gotta leave now. I'm like, did you kill somebody last night? What happened? Like the next day, he showed up for competition. They made it through round 1 and he just had to leave. And he fucking got on a plane and left his partner stranded, like working by himself. That shit to me is funny. That stuff is hilarious. And his buddy went on to do the finale.
No way.
By himself. Yeah. I don't think he won, but like, man, like, it was those kinds of things, like wild things that would happen. And I always talk to the Smiths before they went in. I'm like, this is not that bitch and moan show. Understand that, what you're trying to sell is yourself. This is your business. This is your work. You're not going to make the greatest knife you ever made in your life. You're just trying to do the best you can with the time that you have. Focus on your work. Don't worry about anybody else in the competition. Just you do your thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course I told, you'd prep them because these guys are staying in a room that is half this size for the entire time they're there. It's like being in SEER school, man. There's like writing on the walls, like other dudes that escaped. You know what I mean? they got their freaking episode number up, how many days they were there, freaking escape routes drawn out. It was insane. And that's where they spent all their time, and I felt bad for them in that sense that they were corralled like that. I felt like it was really an injustice to the stars of the show, and then, so when I talked to him, it was all about like patience, dude. Like it takes 250 hours of footage to make this show what it is. And there's a lot of sets and resets and lighting and camera stuff that has to be taken care of. And while I'm explaining it to them and getting them to understand it, I'm also a hypocrite in that I don't understand why the fuck it's taking so long to get those cameras moved around.
Mechanically, how long would it take you to record an episode? Is it a couple?
Four to five. For me personally, it was 3 to 4 days for an episode, because you would have the first round.
Yep.
And then you would have the second round, and then the guys went home for their whatever, and they'd come back for testing. Well, I think when we first started up, it was like 4 to 5 days. The 3 hours to forge was a whole day. It was a whole day of filming. You got in, you shot clean reads, to make sure. And when clean reads, that's just me on camera doing the intros, the outros, some of the weapon stuff. Like when the weapon's up there, sometimes the smiths wouldn't be standing in front of me. And you do like a clean read through. You know what I mean? So if I miss anything or make a mistake, they got it. And then they bring the smiths out. And that was usually my best stuff, to tell you the truth. I loved it when, like, interacting with the smiths, because I'm tired of talking to these fucking guys. Tired of I'm so tired of it, after so many years. And so, like, the smiths, I really enjoyed interacting with the smiths more than anything else. And I was all about learning from the crew at the end. Like, next thing you know, I'm like hanging out with the camera guys, and I'm like, hey, how does this work? What is this? What's that? What lens do you have on there? What are you doing when you're not working on Forged in Fire? Would you be interested in coming doing a thing with me independently? And then there's also the contract stuff. Like, what can I do independently? And for a long time, I couldn't do shit. I couldn't even be in my own documentary that I filmed in 2016.
Really?
Yeah, not without their consent, not without the sign off of the production company, because they own you. So there was a lot of, like, every time I renegotiated, it seemed like I'm not good at negotiating contracts, because it's not what I do. You know what I mean? It's not what I do. I know what I think I should be getting. I know what I think, what I think my performance is worth, but does that line up with their budgets and stuff like that? So there were a lot of battles. My agent, I think, was really at the end of his rope with me at the end, because I'm a little bit of a prima donna. You know what I mean? For 4 years, my trailer, this 2x6 trailer that Grady Powell now sits in, is on top of the fucking trailer that is also the shit box. which everybody on set, all 50 plus people, the Smiths, everybody shits in this shit box all day long, which is fine, because I got my own little private toilet right there too. But, like, in the middle of the summertime, it's leaking freaking, human fluids and stuff like that. And I'm not staying in there. I'm going to wander around your set. I'm going to wander around your set, and I'm going to get in the shit, and I'm going to take knives off the wall to go freaking take pictures of them someplace else. And I used to tell them I'm disruptive. I'm more of a disruptive force in that sense. I couldn't be in that one little space, and it really started to get to me. Even like the 1-bedroom apartment or the 2-bedroom apartment that you're provided. Living in New York is one of the most lonely places in the world you could live. I lived in a hotel for the first 2 seasons, and then we had some apartments after that. And I was able to bring my wife, but it was different. It was a different kind of thing, and you're doing it all the time, all day, every day. Somebody picks you up at home, drops you off at home. You don't have a car there. You're taking a subway everywhere you want to go. Stamford, Connecticut was a commuter city. And then my wife got pregnant, and I couldn't get my own projects off the ground, and I was really frustrated with a lot of things, and I wanted time. I wanted some time to, like, work on. I thought that for a long time, I got really separated from my background, from my brothers, you know what I mean? I wasn't doing the emergency trauma care classes anymore, so I wasn't getting that connection to the dudes, to the fellas. Doug Marcaida was like my connection to veterans, but he's very busy posting on Instagram. He's doing it right now, I guarantee you. There's only so much I could talk about knives and swords, you know what I mean? That's somebody else's area of expertise. Like, I know a lot about it. I can make a fucking great knife. I guarantee you I can. Ask Jason Knight. Between him and Jay Nielsen and even Ben Abbott and Dave, they freaking got me spun up. I can make a good knife. You know what I mean? But is that what I was going to do for a living? Is that what I'm an expert at? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I was very restless, and I had gone and talked to one of the executive producers at A&E about, like, some of the things that I wanted to do, some of the projects that I wanted to do, and he didn't seem like he was very receptive those ideas. And if he was receptive, he's like, maybe we could like turn it into some commercials for Veterans Day or something like that. And I'm like, nah, I think this is a subject that deserves a little bit more attention, this Veterans Transition Project. And I had, my wife and I had filmed a documentary about her family's business, and I think it's interesting and definitely relevant in today's culture about the marijuana industry. And there just wasn't a whole, it's just be the host of Forged in Fire. Just shut up and, we'll get you a commercial. We'll have you do a commercial for Dodge or Ram or something like that. And you're like, okay, that's cool. I fucking love that. It's great. I get to do a Dodge commercial. I get to do a Ford commercial. I get to go to the Ford factory. Hell yeah, man. That stuff was awesome. Awesome. But let's talk more about the job. Let's talk more about like what's going on. Let's talk a little bit more about expanding, about moving into different areas, like because Forged in Fire for me was getting very, very stale.
Yeah.
And it took up so much of my time, and it took my wife and I away from our family and our home, and with the baby coming, I think and she started having seizures and stuff like that in the third trimester of pregnancy.
Oh, shit.
And then, we were doing the Beat the Judges. There were some huge personality conflicts that came up. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I was the person that pushed those conflicts because I felt like we were shifting from some things that had made us successful. And I was very adamant and very open about how I felt about things. I'd never threatened to kill anybody. I'll say that. Like Doug's the only person that ever threatened to kill anybody that I know of. And it was me. But it turned into a thing where, I was really butting heads with the producers on set, and then I started quoting some contract stuff. I was like, according to paragraph, yada, yada, yada.
Ooh, they probably didn't like that.
No. And then I started to feel a little bit like I was trying to, really talk to my chain of command, and they weren't listening. And that's how I felt. That's why I only did 1 year in the reserves. You know what I mean? They never gained me as a reservist. I was a civilian for a year, jumping out of their planes and doing operations and doing pre-deployment prep. I did 100 man days in the reserves. Technically, a civilian. The whole time.
Violates paperwork.
You know what it was? One signature on one piece of paper. And when I was supposed to have there was a lot of stuff that came down, and I went to my chain of command, and it was, they were just like, you got to sort it out. You sort it out. Just sign it. I'm like, well, what about the year that I did? What about all this stuff? What about all this time that I put in? What about my bonus that I was supposed to get at the end of the year? You'll get it next year.
Famous last words.
Yeah. If it was your money and your issues and stuff like that, it'd be a whole different story. So I started to feel a lot like that. You know what I mean? With the show, I started to feel a little bit like they were. And again, this is just me. I felt like there was some manipulation going on, and I was very vocal about it. Very vocal about it. I felt like guys weren't staying in their lane, and I was very vocal about it. And I brought up to David Baker the fact that he was doing an entirely different thing in 2007 than what he was doing now. You know what I mean? I met you. I know what you've been doing up to this point. You know what I mean? I went to his shop when he was filming Deadliest Warrior, when he was doing all the weapons for Deadliest Warrior, and the way that he was making weapons then was a lot different than the way that he started making weapons with Forged in Fire.
Yeah.
And I can say that as a prop maker, he probably learned a lot from the real knife makers that were out there. And then I had a huge problem with a 2-time champion, Forged in Fire being one of the judges. I'm like, his only validation comes from our show. But somehow that has turned into some sort of qualifying thing. You know what I mean? I got my Forged in Fire badge. I'm ready to be a fucking ranger now. You know what I mean? I got my ranger tab. I'm a ranger. You know what I mean? And the Forged in Fire champion thing, again, it is a great accomplishment, you know what I mean, in a time competition, but that doesn't make you an expert at what you do. And Ben Abbott is a fucking amazing smith, an amazing bladesmith. He does highly technical work. I think he's great, and I think he does a great job of explaining himself. I don't know if he's necessarily the best guy for that job. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways. And I didn't think that he was, but we rolled with it. You know what I mean? I don't know how he ended up taking over half of what Jay Nielsen was supposed to come back and do after his injury, but it happened. You know what I mean? And then when we got into the Beat the Judges competition, you had the judges judging one another. And right from the get-go, I was against it. I was like, the judges should not be judging one another. Baker and Abbott are next door neighbors. The familiarity is going to naturally lend favoritism to one guy or the other. And then there's the egos that are involved, you know what I mean? Like all the judges are competing that make blades, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And there's been a lot of, and I'm the biggest for stirring a pot. I compare all of them to each other. Is that, you think that's what Jay would do? Do you think that's what Ben would do? Well, Jay said this. Ben said that. Dave freaking, I would pit them against one another because that's my job. To get them to freaking look at things from different perspectives and to also ignite that conversation, you know what I mean? To question the decisions that they're making. You want to know why at home, right? Yeah. Why are you making that decision? So do I. And when I don't understand it or it doesn't jive with the standard that's been set, I had a huge problem with that. You know what I mean? Just because was never a thing. If you were making that decision based on skills that you don't have, I had a huge problem with that. I even, Doug Markida at the end, he tried to talk to me at the gym one day, and I was like, look, here's the problem that I have. I was like, everybody here is talking about the efficacy of these weapons in combat and how they work in combat and in combat keeps coming up. And I was like, and quite frankly, I was like, not a single one of us, not even fucking me, knows about what it's like to be in fucking combat. I was like, even you. I was like, you're an edged weapons expert, Doug. That's great. Yeah, with a fucking when did you become an expert with a fucking claymore? You know what I mean? Like, you've got your opinion. It's based off a certain amount of fucking knowledge, but your word isn't like set in stone. It's not like you're Moses or something. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, there is room for questioning a lot of this stuff, especially when it goes against your own decisions in the past. Ben Abbott wore a shirt with something that I said, with a quote from me on it that says, performance is secondary, or looks are secondary to performance. He had a shirt made that he would wear around. Looks are secondary to performance, Wil Willis. I'd say in that Beat the Judges competition, that shit did not apply. It did not fucking apply, and I had a huge problem with it. And I said the judges shouldn't be judging one another. We should have brought in past champions or other knife makers to come in and judge. You know what I mean? A lot of times I got into big arguments. I got into big arguments. And when I started quoting contracts and talking about game manipulation and talking about paragraph 7A, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I was like, I don't want to be involved in any of this stuff.
Well, now that you have what seems like some open runway in front of you and choices to do what you want, what are your plans? What do you want to do?
Well, I started this thing in 2016 called the Veteran Transition Project. It was originally the American Walkabout, where I was driving across the country and I was trying to get my head on straight, I think, more than anything. And I was talking to veterans about their successes, transitioning out of the military. And I never really have finished that project. Even some of the files, they're so old now, they're like corrupted. So I'm going back through and I'm trying to fix this documentary and follow up on my promise to people. I did a crowdfunding campaign. I still got all the money from that crowdfunding campaign just sitting in a bank account. You know what I mean? To get this thing done. And I hired an editor. And I got an editor to work on it, and it just didn't turn into what I wanted it to be, and it's hard to watch yourself go through this stuff. But what I want to do is kind of the same thing, but with my wife and son, take them to meet these veterans who are doing great things and have these interesting jobs, or who are doing these great programs, and not just veterans, anybody that's part of that same community, and looking to inspire and lead the people around them, and just kind of do like what you do here, but on the road. You know what I mean? Like, I like talking to people. I like learning new things. I like asking questions, and I like traveling around. And when I think about what I'm really good at, it's a story. That's it. I'm good at a story, and I like to hear them just as much as I like to tell them. And I think everybody out there has an interesting story to tell. It's about getting to the root of what that story would mean to somebody else or the rest of the world, you know.
I do not believe that everybody has an interesting story.
No?
I feel like there are some fucking dum-dums out there.
Yeah, but even that's interesting. Like, how the fuck did you end up walking down the street at 6 a.m. in a nightgown with feet so fucking black they look like the asphalt that I'm driving on? And, you know, how does that happen? That's an interesting story. I want to be a fly on the wall. And this is a true story. I saw this woman just walking down the road in San Diego, 6 a.m., nightgown, young woman, feet the color of the freaking road. You know what I mean? And she looked rough. And all I wanted to know was, like, when you walked out of the door this morning, what made you think that was okay to just be wearing a nightgown? Like, I just wanted to be there for that decision.
Meth is a hell of a drug.
Yeah, but the actual decision, like the point where they're like, no, this is okay.
Again, meth is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
You never know who's making the decisions.
Yeah, but even that in and of itself is an interesting story. There are a lot of guys that have turned to drugs. You know, I told you how I started smoking weed again. Even that is an interesting story to me, and somebody else might find it applicable. You know, how did this help you out? You know, and you know, so that's what I'm all about. I'm all about like a good story, telling stories. I'm doing some advising stuff, or you know, for some films. I had a guy reach out to me who I really respect in the industry. Yeah, I've never met him. I just respect him for his legacy, I guess. Reached out to me and has been asking me to work with him on some projects, you know, bringing what little military experience I have to his projects, just to add a little bit of what he would call no bullshit, you know, like just the no bullshit.
Desperately needed in that industry.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of TA type stuff. And man, you want to talk about a battle between authenticity and entertainment.
Yeah.
Entertainment winning out 90% of the time.
Because that's what you're doing it for. You're doing it for entertainment. Sure. And anybody that's watching any movie that has military shit in it, it's not always authentic. Even that Navy SEAL movie that came out, that was all 100%, supposed to be 100% real.
Documentary.
Oh, yeah.
Are we talking about Charlie Sheen?
No. We're talking about that other one.
Act of Valor?
Act of Valor.
The fuck show, Act of Valor?
Yeah. Even that one. My big brother forced me to go watch that with him.
You're never going to get that time back.
And
that was arguably one of the worst movies ever created.
And that's, you know, that's the thing. That's the thing. We're really good at what we do when it comes to like actions on the objective, understanding, again, weapons and tactics.
That part of the movie was great. The acting portion,
and that's what I was going to say.
Spoiler alert, people, they weren't actors.
Not necessarily the best at acting like we know what we're doing.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And there were some during the military free fall thing when they're supposed to be hey-hoing and they're like got their masks off and shit. Like when I saw that right away, I was like, well, that's horse shit because you have to pre-breathe for 30 minutes on the fucking ground before you ever go up.
Yeah.
I was like, so you're not having that conversation with the fucking ramp down at 30 grand. It's not fucking happening.
6 minutes.
Yeah. And so again, even when they're, you know, flying that flag that says authentic military tactics, you're like,
not so much.
We tried.
Dialogue is tough with that horse bag on your face.
Yeah. And then look at John Wick. Everybody thinks that's what tactical shooting is supposed to be. And you're like, this is a fucking comic book. You do realize that this is a comic book. And
if you can view that movie through the lens of a comic book, it's amazing.
It's fucking amazing.
But if you try to view it through the lens of authenticity, it's a little bit rougher. Those things are kicking your ass.
I know. I don't know what's going on with them. It's like my hair is rejecting them.
I've enjoyed it, though, for the last few hours watching you battle.
Is there
with
a left and a right on these sons of bitches?
You get to choose. I'm not somebody...
God. It's like my hair, like even a hat nowadays, my hair just pushes it away. Like, no, don't cover the flow.
How many jumps do you have?
Over 200. I jump mastered more than I ever jumped. You know what I mean? Because you would just do multiple passes with students, but over 200 jumps. It
was one of my favorite aspects of the job. So first time I did a free fall jump, I was like, yep, this is definitely a path that I want to pursue.
I had 40 jumps, I think 42 jumps coming out of the Ranger Battalion. So when I got stationed in Iceland right out of PJ school, within 6 months of getting there, they had a jump master slot open up at the combat control school. But you still had to have the Army requisite 40 jumps. Well, most of these guys had like a shit ton of free fall jumps, but no static line jumps.
Yep.
They weren't quite there. But I had them. I was like, I got the jumps. They're like, you're going to jump master school after 6 months at the unit. So there's a little bit of resentment there, I think.
Animosity.
Yeah, a little bit of resentment. But I was like, hey, guys, I was a Ranger before, too. Don't forget, I'm
Yeah.
not just some guy that's right out of the schoolhouse. And so I went to the combat control jump master school and with guys like Chris Tellsworth and Mike Atkins, God rest him, and
Didn't Tellsworth serve at the 24th?
yeah, he was. So was Mike.
So-
they were at the 2-4 when I went with them.
So
Yeah.
Chris was he augmented our squadron. I
Oh,
worked
yeah?
with him quite a bit.
I believe he was the Jessica Lynch BJ, if I'm not
That is
mistaken.
correct. I was just outside the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were there together on that.
Yeah, so there you go. Yeah, the degrees of separation get smaller and smaller.
Crazy small. I was actually blown away when you threw out Joe Barnhart's name. I was like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah, Joe. Yeah. I like Joe a lot. And again, Chris Tellsworth, I liked him
Yep.
a lot. And these are all guys with different personalities, you know what I mean? And I never imitated anybody else's personality, but there were times that I wish that I could be more like a Mike Atkins. You know what I mean? More times I wish I could be like more reserved and less of a, I guess what you would call a Mary Andrew. You know what I mean? I'm one of those guys that like, I love to laugh and have a good time and shoot the shit. And then when it's time to work, it's time to work. I'm the last guy run into the helo because I was shooting the shit with somebody inside, but
I get it.
yeah. I'm the guy that everybody hates. What the fuck, man? This fucking guy. Yeah.
Where can people find you? We've been at this for over 3 hours.
Have we?
Yes.
I told you I like to talk, man.
That's actually
I'm sorry, dude.
No, that's a good podcast guest.
Yeah.
Well, a bad podcast guest would be somebody you ask a complicated question to or an open-ended question. The answer is no. Like, fuck.
Yeah. No, I to my own probably detriment, I talk too much, but people can find right now I'm just doing like an Instagram thing. I turned off my comments a while back after somebody was like, I hope your wife and baby die in a car accident.
That's a rough one.
And I didn't like that, so I turned off comments for a long time, and I really started thinking about like, is this necessary? For me to be involved with people that I don't even know. Is it right for them to be able to come at me and say things without it? And like, look, man, my homies, like if I ever did anything to offend you or I fuck something up and you come at me and you're like, dude, you're a fucking piece of shit and you did this. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I deserve that. But if you don't know me, you've never been around me, never worked with me, you know what I mean? Because there are a lot of guys that know me from like what other guys have said.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you've got a lot to say about it. You better freaking do your homework. You better pack your bags and you better be ready for some snapback, because what I decided when I turned my comments back on was that I wasn't going to just let somebody say whatever they want to me. I would call them out on inappropriate stuff. If you come out and you just say, oh, you're a fucking idiot, I hate you. Well, that's great. I'm glad. Like last night's a perfect example. Somebody was like, you write or fucking die on my Instagram. Something like that. Like just saying something ridiculous. Like, you're a big rooster. That's what he said. You're just a fucking rooster. I don't know what that means. And that's what I said. I said, I don't know what that means. But if it's supposed to mean that I'm a big cock, you're right. And you noticed, and then heart, kiss, whatever.
Which probably twisted that person into orbit.
Yeah. So it's those kinds of people that I have a problem with. It's those kinds of reactions. I'm all about having and I curse a lot. And just because you curse doesn't mean that you're being disrespectful. It's part of our vernacular now. Everybody does it. You know what I mean? I'm going to say everybody does it. There isn't anybody that I know that doesn't let one slip every now and again. And I use it as a verbal pause. I'm a fuck chicken from way back. Fuck. I do it.
Yep.
And I have a way of like talking that is very much my own. But it doesn't mean that I'm trying to be disrespectful to anybody. And I'm never out there looking to tear anybody else's freaking struggle apart. And that's what a lot of times people are looking to do. They're looking to take what they're feeling, take their emotion, and project that out into the world. And I understand it. I really do. I understand where you're coming from. But projecting all of that emotion, and all of the fear and all of the hatred and all the anxiety and stuff that you have, you're projecting it out into the world to people who cannot do anything about it, is the wrong answer. You know what I mean? If you want to have a conversation back and forth about a difference of opinion, that's fine. We can do that. And I can tell you where I'm coming from. You can tell me where you're coming from. And fuck, I'm wrong a lot. I put out bad numbers about AIDS a while back, and I'll come back and tell you, like, I was wrong about that. Here's a website where you can find all the information. I'm not I'm not Google. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, I'm just pulling information or I'm paralleling something, off the top of my head. And people want to say, oh, God, you're Tom Brokaw. You should have done your research. I'm not fucking Tom Brokaw. I'm some douchebag who freaking Forrest Gumped his way into television, and for you to sit in your home and say, like, you should be this or you should be that. You know how many people I've had tell me that they're disappointed in something I did, but based on my military background? You smoke weed, you should be ashamed of yourself. You were an Army Ranger and Air Force Pararescueman. I'm like, and those dudes probably need weed too. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Better than antidepressants, I'll tell you that. Better than alcohol. I never freaking tried to fight a whole bar full of people when I was high. You know what I mean? What I did was I turned all of that stuff inward, and I became very self-reflective, and I learned to live with myself, because all of that other crap is running. That's just you running from yourself. The drinking, the whatever, that's you running from everything. What weed did for me was help me to slow down and really think about what's going on inside of me and how I can be a better person in the world. And that's what I'm kind of trying to, I want to inspire people. I don't want to tear anybody down. I don't want to denigrate anybody's character or their background. You got guys out there that are claiming to be, stuff that they're not, and if you need to do that for you, in your heart of hearts, you need to tell yourself that. Don't tell other people that you're something that you're not. You know what I mean? There's a certain amount of freedom and relief that comes with being honest with yourself. You know what I mean? I can be honest with myself. I was an okay Ranger, and I was an okay PJ. I was stellar at some things, and then at other things I was fucking absolutely terrible about. Interpersonal relationships were never my strength. But to be able to say, this is what hand I played in those things, and be honest with myself about it, has given me so much peace in my soul about things that now I just want other people to realize that, like, you can be a complete fuck up, man. You really can. You can drop the ball on every decision that you ever had to make. But if you freaking just stop and you draw a line and you say, I'm not going to do that anymore, or I'm not going to participate in that kind of behavior, that kind of thought pattern anymore, and you legitimately take steps in a different direction, you can become the person that you imagined that you would be when you were fucking 12. Nobody imagined that they were going to be abusing drugs as a meth addict or a crackhead or anything like that when they were a little kid. I had a vision of the type of person that I wanted to be when I grew up, and that's another reason I joined the Army. I wanted to be a fucking tough guy. I wanted to be a badass. I wanted to be somebody who other people would follow and respect and like stuff like that. And I always wanted to lead, and I was always not ready. You know what I mean? I was always like too maybe a little bit too ambitious. And then as you get older and you experience the setbacks and you realize that, you're not always right all the time. You're not always going to be perfect. You know what I mean? And even like the things, what the scariest thing is? The things that only you know about yourself. That's the scariest shit. And when you really start to confront that stuff, and you start being honest with yourself about the things that only you know about yourself, that nobody else knows about you, that's when you can say, all right, I'm moving in the right direction, and that's what I had to do. I'd start really being honest with the things impulse control. You got problems, man. You get drinking problems. You get this, you got that. And like when I was really honest with myself, and I was like, I do have these issues, and you had to find a different way to engage it. That's when I found out that like I just want to help other people to I'm not a mental health expert. You know what I mean? I just want to help other people realize that there is help out there. There is a community of people who are just like you, who have stumbled, fallen, fucking ate shit, like been pissing on their own chest in the middle of a fucking party, and still managed to somehow continue to move forward in a direction that was positive. And I'll say that after my motorcycle ride in 2016, after I met with Marty and Lindsay and Antonio, and I learned, and Andrew Bennett, who was on the Extortion 17 recovery, and I met with these guys, and I listened to their stories and the difficulties and successes that they were having. That's when I was like, okay, this is a message that I want to take to the world. This is the message that I want to bring to the community, is that no matter what organization you're aligning yourself with, whether it's Wounded Warriors or, you know, any of these other organizations that are there to help veterans, they're out there, and they're out there to help you. And that's where I give the military an F+ or an F-. Like, how come you're not following up with veterans? You sure worked your ass off to freaking get them in. You know what I mean? Months, years even. I mean, think about guys taking delayed taking the ASVAB in 11th grade.
Yep.
That recruiter will follow you around for a fucking year, making sure that you're staying on top of things, all that stuff. They freaking really shepherd you in, and then they indoctrinate you, and they teach you all of these things you need to be able to do to facilitate the military mission. But the day that you retire, ETS, freaking get booted, whatever, all of that support that you thought you had diminishes by, I'm going to say 95%, just to throw out a big percentage that sounds extreme.
I'd say it's higher.
And then you got nobody, your homies, they're still running around doing the do. If you stay in Virginia Beach and you're retired, you know what you're getting? You're getting a big fucking slap in the face every time these guys come back from some kick-ass fucking deployment, and they're telling you about it. And you're like, oh man, fuck, dude, I wish I was on that. But I was at Home Depot all day, or that sort of thing, and it's kind of sad that the military, also gets rid of guys that aren't ready to go. Those dudes that are fucking like badass hardcore warriors that have been in for like 20 years, but their rank isn't commiserate with like how long they've been on. You got to make room for the young guys, like this guy's a badass warrior. I don't think that's a general concern for life. But a guy who's like a master sergeant, who's an amazing leader and has inspired other people to be great leaders, and who's still running and gunning, like a Brian Mosier or somebody like that. And I say Brian Mosier because he's the chief of the team up, one of the PJ teams up in Long Island. This is a guy who I highly respect. He was a Marine before. He's still a PJ, and I know he can still do the do. But at 30 years, guess what, bro?
See ya.
You know what I mean? And my dad retired after 26. I saw his transition. He was like picking corn, not sure what he's going to do. He had one foot in the old world, never really used a computer. You know what I mean? So all of his personnel management skills were obsolete. And that's what happens to guys. You know what I mean? You get out and you don't have this like set of standards and regulations and books that are going to tell you what you need to do and when to do it and how to dress and how to lead. And then you just try to take the things that you know about what's effective and you apply it to whatever situation that you're in right now. And the first time you call somebody a fucking idiot on camera, like because they're being a fucking idiot, it doesn't go over well.
Yeah.
And it's something that you just say offhand, dude, you're a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? Everything that you just said, fucking idiocy. You're a fucking idiot, and you move on.
Because it's a common greeting.
That doesn't mean that I don't think tomorrow that something that you're going to say is brilliant. You know what I mean? It's just a way of expressing yourself, or that's the kind of culture that we build where you can be like that with one another. Even the females, man. I don't care what anybody says. I've worked with a lot of females in the military, not as many as some because it was special operations. PJ's all male. Ranger Battalion's definitely all male. There wasn't a female around for miles. You had to leave base for that kind of entertainment. Victory drive, yeah. So anyway. No, I'm saying that the thing is, coming back to the female thing is shit. What was I going with that? I started thinking about Victory Drive, and
I'm assuming that's where the strip clubs were.
yeah. The more you tip, the more erotic your experience becomes. That was the motto.
That was the motto.
The more you tip, the more erotic your experience will get.
There's probably a Victory Drive in most cities or towns that have a military installation.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I was there for the full experience. You know what I mean? I wanted to see it all. I wanted to see it all. I wanted to do it all. If I had been deployed to Southeast Asia, I would have went to those places that you only hear freaking fantastical, outrageous story tales about. I would have gone. I've been like, I have to see this with my own eyes. Anything. Somebody tells you a volcano's erupting in Iceland, I'm going to go fucking look at it. I want to see that. Yeah.
I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
Closing thoughts by Wil Willis.
Oh shit, man.
Doesn't have to be deep.
You know what, man? Here's the thing. Find comfort in your own skin by really being honest with yourself about who you are and who you want to be in your life. And if you don't want like the person that you are, that you have been, or the decisions that you've made, come to terms with those decisions. They happened. You know what I mean? You can't change anything that's already happened. Like, I'm fucking sorry, I can't. I don't have a time machine. If I did, I'd go forward. I don't know that I'd go back, but try to be, if you're going through something, reach out to your homies. Try to be a better person every day, and that goes for everybody. Try to be a better person every day. If you're already the Pope, he's still trying to be a better person every fucking day, and understand that everybody in the world is going through something. Like you said, like there are some people out there that are fucking idiots, and
correct,
and they just are, and that's how it is, and there's nothing you can do about them. And I just try to understand where they're coming from. I'm not saying that I disagree with you or that they're not idiots, but I've been that person. I've learned everything that I do. Every hard lesson, I had to do it twice. So I'd never judge anybody. I really don't. Even if somebody's a fucking serial killer, I'm like, at the end of that, like, dude, you're maybe just supposed to be a predator. I don't know. There's a psychology in there that, and stuff like that. What you did is wrong, absolutely. But is it your fault that you are the way that you are? You know what I mean? Is there something that could have been done to manage this stuff? I tell people that I was probably, as a kid, one bedwetting incident away from being a serial killer. I think, cruelty to animals. I kicked a few cats and freaking blew up bullfrogs and did nasty shit. I was abused as a child. What else is a serial killer freaking trait? All of these traits.
I have no idea.
All these traits. I've done a lot of psychology. I've read up on a lot of psychology because I'm always like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And so, even with that stuff, like, how did it go the other way? You know what I mean? With the amount of abuse that, whether or not, and look, my brothers and sisters will say, that didn't happen like that sometimes. You know what I mean? It didn't happen like that. I'm like, to you. Maybe it didn't happen like that to you, but that's how I perceive the situation. Yeah. But I don't think any of them would disagree with me. That's for sure, especially about my stepmom. But I think that in the end, everything comes out in the wash. Everything comes out in the wash in the end. In the end, at the end of your life, when you get there, you got to be able to look around and just understand that you did your best. You know what I mean? Hopefully you did your best. And to me, that's heaven. Knowing that when I leave this world, I did my best. I fell in the house. I was jackassing around with my wife, and I smashed my head into a step, and I was bleeding. It was bad. I knew I was fucked up. I knew I was concussed. And my wife is there. We're in this mountain home all by ourselves. It's the middle of winter time. And I tell her, you're just going to braid my hair together. We're not going to the hospital. You're just going to braid my hair together, cover it, as a stitch. And we're not going to the hospital. So I go upstairs, and she's got me, she's braiding my hair and looking at it, at this cut. And I'm feeling it, man. I'm feeling really, really woozy, like I fucked myself up. And I've never been knocked out before. And I started walking out of the bathroom. I was like, hold on, I just got to go lay down or something. She's like, don't lay down. And I passed out. My face, the last thing I remember is my face like hitting the door jam, and I felt it. I remember feeling it definitely hit me. It wasn't painful. The feeling of like rocking back, and I was out, and I woke up, and my wife was over the top of me, and she's freaking out, losing her shit, and I'm so unconscious that my heels are tucked up underneath my ass, and I'm laying on my legs, you know what I mean, and I'm completely limp. And I just remember coming to, and she's over the top of me, and I grabbed her. I said, "It's okay, babe. Nobody's ever had more fun than me." And she's like, "What?" And she's like, I was like, if I die right now, and I was fucking loopy, man. Like I was out of it. I was like, if I go right now, it's okay. I want you to know that this has been the greatest adventure ever, and that I just told her all this, and like even right now, like I really meant it. I was like, if this is it, man, I'm okay with it. It's okay. I remember telling her like, it's okay if this is it. Like I had a good time. And I'm ready. And I've always had an obsession with like what's after. You know what I mean? I don't know what it is. I'm not a religious guy per se. I'm very spiritual, but I've always had an obsession with like I told you, I started thinking about suicide when I was 8. You know, and it just kind of has followed me around, this idea of death and this obsession. I think about it all the time. Like, how's it going to happen? I hope it happens all of a sudden. You know what I mean? I hope it's just one of those, even like with the
I hope it's not a wood chipper.
Yeah.
Feet first.
But even that, like, okay, that's how it went down. But, you know, it's always been like that. Like, when it happens, it's going to happen. You don't get to choose unless you commit suicide, which I'm not down for. I mean, I did. I had a pistol in my mouth when I was in high school, and I've told people about this on Instagram. And I didn't do it. And I don't think that I could ever do it. And I've been close, and I've called, you know, my big sister, and I was like, here's what's fucking going down right now. Like, I am losing my shit. And you know, had to have that talk down, and had to reflect on all of those feelings and things that you go through. And people are like, how could you, that you have all these things? You have all of these things and all of these things in your life. How could you still? Well, that's the illness, you know, for me. You know, that's my own problem to deal with, and not for anybody else to judge. And I think that I think that we have a lot of people out there that are scared to engage on problems like borderline personality disorder or depression or and I think a lot of guys, especially where we come from, have borderline. They've got fear of abandonment issues. They have impulse control problems. They have substance abuse issues.
Oh, yeah.
And somehow you've gotten yourself into a career field that feeds your impulses.
And rewards them.
You know what I mean? Like jumping out of fucking planes. I mean, how many times have you been on the DZ after a jump and you're all just jacked? You got that adrenaline. Yeah, exactly. You got that adrenaline rush. You're all just jacked. And it's the same every time. Almost every time you get that same feeling every time, but then you just want it more and more and more and more, like it's a drug. You know what I mean? And I used to tell my students, like when you're looking to step off the end of that ramp, like you got to be okay with dying. You got to be okay with it, because you're jumping a chute in the Air Force, at least, that somebody else fucking packed, and who knows what kind of day that guy had when he packed your parachute. So when you make that decision, I hope that you're ready. You know what I mean? I hope that you've got everything squared away, and I hope that, you know, you're not leaving anything, you know, left behind. Because I don't feel like there's anything in the world that I've wanted to do that I didn't chase after and accomplish in some way. And I think that it's important for people to do that. It's okay to do that. I've been called selfish a lot. I'm sure you have too.
I have.
Yeah. But here's the thing, man. Like, you got to do what's going to make you happy. And if you're denying that, and a lot of times that's what causes depression, you know what I mean? And also unanswered sort of internal issues. Again, it's okay that you're a dude, that you're a guy, or that you're a hard charger, a woman who's going through stuff. You know what I mean? Everybody is. Everybody's going through something. Talk to people. Be honest with people about how you're feeling about things. You know what I mean? Be honest with people about, like, your past. You know what I mean? And there are still some things I won't talk about with people. Like, I'm not going to talk to you about everything. Like, some of the things are just for me and the other people that were involved. Even the Forged in Fire thing, me talking about that, I think this is the first time I've ever talked about publicly, what I thought of the entire process and why I think things went down. Ultimately, I got a call on April 1st, and they were like, we're letting you go because of COVID cutbacks. But that is counter to what happened prior to that. You know what I mean? There were other things that happened. And I can say, yeah, I'm a hard guy to work with. There were personality conflicts. I can be honest about that stuff. What's alarming is when you don't get that honesty from the other side. You had Keith Berry on here, right?
Yeah.
I went to SOMC with Keith Berry. And, there's a lot of stuff in the military, like what Keith Berry went through,
Yeah.
that isn't just exclusive to the military. You know what I mean? It happens in a lot.
For sure.
And if anything, that idea of persecuting that guy, Keith Berry, came from outside of the military and was kind of, it was just the period of time that we were in. And it's just like the violence thing. Because I draw a doodle on a script in my trailer and leave it there, it doesn't mean that I'm a fucking violent person. It means that you came in, saw some of my private thoughts on a piece of paper, circulated it around, and made people scared of something they shouldn't have been scared of. And those are the kinds of things that are upsetting, that upset me. Here I am dealing with my issues and my problems, and now somebody from the outside is like making some sort of judgment about it. And I think that that's wrong. I'd never judge anybody who came to me and said, this is what I'm going through. Here's the real deal problem, and I want you to help me out with it, or I understand that, this is what's going on. So much I want to say. There's so much. Like 3 hours is not enough time, man.
Then that just means we do round 2.
Oh well, let's do it. Let's do it. I could do round 2. I'm here. I
don't mean today. I'll have you come back up.
Yeah, that's fine. I enjoy talking, and I enjoy talking about all this stuff. And you said closing thoughts about half an hour ago.
That's okay. I'll let you go, man.
So my closing thoughts of this, and this is where you can find me. I'm trying to get a road show going, basically, where my wife is a director. She directed our documentary, a hell of a producer. She also writes children's books. We're just kind of doing our own thing. Like, how do we make money as a family? How do we go into a family business and sustain ourselves, doing what we love to do creatively? And for me, it's about storytelling. I want to be able to write movies and direct movies and produce movies. I want to be able to do my own content, reality content, my own shows. Like if I want to, like, let's say me and you, we want to go snowboarding for a day. I want to be able to go out and say, hey, me and Andy, we're going snowboarding. We're going to talk about X, Y, Z. We're going to do the same thing basically you and me are doing here, just with some physical activity involved. Or if you're a knife maker and I come to see you, well, let's fucking make a knife and talk about some of the shit. Neil Kamimura talks about PTS and depression and suicide while he forges the knives, and he talks to veterans about this stuff. He's not a veteran. What is he bringing to the table? This is the stuff that I'm really interested in, is people helping other people, elevating one another as human beings. I'm so tired. I am so tired of the division, the forced division, the injected division. Being a military brat, everybody's just got a different candy-coated shell. I think of everybody as an M&M. Everybody's got a different candy-coated shell, but you're all peanuts and chocolate on the inside. You know what I mean? And we're all just being consumed. We're all being eaten up by time. And time doesn't give a shit if you're the fucking green M&M or the brown one. You're going to get eaten up. And that's how it is. And you just want to do the best you can with the time that you have. And then legacy. What do you want to leave behind? What kind of things do you want to leave behind for your kids? I think everybody in a lot of ways is worried about legacy, especially as men. What am I leaving behind? Is there going to be a name? Am I going to survive? They say you die the second time you die is when somebody speaks your name for the last time, right? So how long does that go? And I would say that not very far, maybe 2 generations.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're, what kind of impact are you going to have on the world? Is it going to be a positive impact or a negative impact? I got a high school teacher, Joe Graben. He doesn't even know that I know his name probably. And he was my baseball class coach. Not even my baseball coach. I couldn't make the team. I was too small. But he was my baseball class coach, and he called me Mooseness because everybody called me Moose when I was growing up, and he was one of the most supportive individuals that I've ever met in my entire life. You know, he didn't take any shit. He was a super fit guy. He loved the baseball, and I would say that I looked at him like a father figure without ever acknowledging. I never did anything outside of school with him. Yeah. Never. Saw him one time outside of school, ever. And that guy had a huge impact on me. I'd rather be that kind of guy. The kind of guy who people were like, yeah, man, that guy, my brother is one of those guys. He's a school teacher up in Northern California, man. The best kind of guy. His students reach out to me like, dude, your fucking brother's my teacher. He's the best. It's awesome. And he is. He's fucking amazing. Those kinds of people inspire me. You know what I mean? I'm a selfish motherfucker. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to figure out how to pay my bills without working for, somebody that I disagree with. You're doing a good job. Doing a good job. Me, I'm trying to figure out how to find a group of people that I don't disagree with too much, that I can work with and do creative stuff. And it's a tough business because, like, let's say, it's a tough business to get into, and we can talk about that some other time. But yeah, man, just try to be a better person every day, and instead of denigrating, the people around you for not being the same as you, try to elevate a little bit. You know what I mean? Go the other direction. Kill them with kindness. Kill them with a freaking hug and a kiss, man. Why not? I used to, Raymond Colin Lopez, I used to hug and kiss that guy all the time, man. He'd be fucking all pissed off, be like, dude, you just need a hug, man. Come on, come in here and get a hug. And it's one of those things. Somebody, a civilian guy introduced me to this idea. When another dude offers you a hug and you're like, I don't want a hug, but he hugs you anyway, you still feel kind of good afterwards.
Accurate.
You know what I mean? You're still both smiling at the end of it, and you're like, get the hell off me, but like you feel kind of good at the end of it. And I think we need more hugs. You know what I mean? We need to give more hugs to people. Be like, it's okay, man, that you're upset. It's okay that we disagree. That's just the way of the world. We're not always going to see eye to eye on shit. And let's just try to be better people for everyone moving forward. That's my final thought.
I can't add into that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to come up here.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, man.
No, man. Thank you for having me. And I didn't know what this was going to be like.
Neither did I.
We talked about a lot of crazy shit, man. I wasn't too crazy, right?
No.
Did I incriminate myself on any level?
I'm not a lawyer.
Oh, man. Jeff, I'm sorry.
That's awesome, man. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you again to Babbel for supporting the podcast. Babbel is the #1 selling language learning app. Today, or whatever day you listen to this, when you purchase a 3-month Babbel subscription, you'll get an additional 3 months for free. That is 6 months for the price of 3. Just go to Babbel.com and use the promo code ClearedHot.
Understand the west bank of the river? That's A firm, west bank, and give me hell. He'll give it to me in the grove. Okay, one's in from the north. I've got the west bank of the river. Two's going to give it to you in the grove. Roger, give me that gun run. Right along that bag, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, whether you're listening on an audio-only platform or you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate that you take the time every week to tune in. People ask me a lot, what can they do to help me spread the word? And the answer is actually embedded in the question. The biggest thing you guys can do to help me, if you enjoy the podcast and you think it would be helpful to others, is subscribe and share it with other people. And if you have the time, go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and a review. If you think the podcast sucks, tell me it sucks and leave a 0-star review or the lowest stars possible. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can go to clearedhotpodcast.com. And there is a contact me button right there, which will land in my inbox. And the last thing, if people are interested in helping out, what you can do is fly the old flag. And by that, I don't mean an actual flag, because I don't have any of those. I'm talking about t-shirts or sweatshirts or hats, whatever it may be. Again, clearedhotpodcast.com. Click on the shop tab, and hopefully something in there looks like it would be an item you would like to wear around town. And then you can tell people what it is when they ask you. But that is it. The biggest thing I can say is thank you. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see ya.